Hello.
We're live.
Hello, all.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome, Thursday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and I didn't have to think about it that
You didn't have
time.
to think about it. Okay, cool.
Jen and I were just talking behind the scenes. And of course, everybody, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube. Watch on YouTube. We're going to get right into this in just a minute. But Jen and I were just briefly, again, there's we had all of these stories ready to go for this evening. And then the next thing you know, in the last 24 hours, it's just been this bombardment of all these different things that just show up.
But right now we're competing with people talking to people about Assange. Stella Morris is on with Katie Halper. And I saw that Kevin Gazzola and Gabriel Shipton were on with Jordan.
And of course, the guy that I was really hoping was going to be the presidential nominee, Michael Avenatti, unfortunately has been sent to federal prison. I mean, I know it's just such a freaking tragedy.
I'm so disappointed.
So much faith in that guy. Oh, my Lord. And again, there is and just put it on social media. I just watched that video of the compilation of all of these of MSNBC, CNN, all of them literally giving him a tongue bath about how great he is. And it's like, do you understand how complicit you are in Michael Avenatti? That he is only a household name because of you? Yeah. That is it.
I mean, that he's one of those made up people. He's like the Spice Girls.
You know what? Without further ado, because we've got a lot to do tonight.
We
do.
We have an extra guest. We have a bonus guest.
But I really do believe that is the perfect transition, because this is right in his wheelhouse.
Okay.
In regards to these ridiculous clips that you can find on social media of corporate media just, oh my God, who is it? But again, Michael Avenatti is all about the anti-Trump narrative that maximized the ratings for corporate media. That's all it is. He is a complete product of that. So without further ado, we are going to bring on a very awesome guest, Case Study QB. I don't even know his name. So it's kind of like I
just didn't know he was ever going to put his face out in public. I thought he was
this is his last chance. You can
He's
jump
like the Wizard
right
of
now,
Oz.
because once I add you into the stream, there is no going back, baby. 5, 4, 3.
All right, bring him on. This is exciting. Hey!
Unmute yourself.
Yeah, what's going on, everyone?
Good evening.
How you doing? You can call me Case for sure. That's on my show. We do political junkies every Monday at 8 p.m. I know you guys do a show too, but much love to everybody.
But right now we're competing with Katie right now, who's
I know, right? It's so much
it is what it is.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, but you know what? I'd like to think that the Assange telethon that we did do probably did get a lot of traction, because Case, I'm not sure if how much of the live stream you caught when Jen and Katie hosted it, but it got to the point where I think it was Rania Kalik who called the Senate office, and the lady, she actually did it live, and the lady picked up. She's like, "Could you stop calling my office?" It's like, okay, well, it looks like we're doing something right.
Yeah, hey, that's awesome. That's what I like to see. I like to see more activism on the left and less drama. But that's another topic for another day, I guess.
Hey, listen, a lot of channels have been building themselves off of other channels. That's not what we do. We're about the nooks and crannies. We're about really getting stuff done. And we even said the other day, the whole thing about the Medicare for All marches, it's like, look, even if it's a little ragtag, at least they're doing something.
Yes.
There are people who are just sitting on their hands like, well, we got to wait for the perfect opportunity. No, there is no perfect opportunity. You just do it.
So
I'm so excited about
what are you
the Medicare for All
march. You wanted to come on. You wanted to tell us about something important. So just tell people who you are who don't know.
Yeah, so basically, I have a channel, Case Study QB, on Twitter, also on YouTube. Those are my main channels that I put a lot of focus on. And the main channel is the Twitter channel. And basically, I put out clips that progressives can use. And the main purpose of these clips is to hopefully educate us. And the way I see it, when I send a tweet, I'm talking to my progressive family. Like, if you're following me, you're part of the family. If I don't at you, then you're not in our discussion. So I'm not atting, I don't at Biden. I don't at, other politicians. I only at people that I want, I would at, AOC or any of the people who I would consider in our realm, even though there's people who, say fraud squad and all that stuff. We have our different criticisms, but we're all trying to get Medicare for all. If you're trying to get Medicare for all, you're on my team. And that's how I see it.
Yes. Excellent.
So, Case, I'm curious, obviously there's been a lot of this bickering back and forth and whatnot, but I do think it's important that we highlight, and I'm sure that, again, that's your primary objective. We had Steve Donziger on our show recently in regards to his case against Chevron. And, there was this big event that our good friend Jordan Cheriton covered for Status Coup the other day. And I have to say, of all the people that have been very successful, if you will, in the entertainment industry, there is no one with bigger cojones than Susan Sarandon. There really isn't. She just kind of lets it fly in a really, she does it in an eloquent way, but she doesn't hide the fact that she is very disappointed in some of the leadership in regards to, what they're doing. And I'm curious if you've caught some good clips recently in regards to that, because I think that there was a lot that needed to be addressed as far as the whole Donziger case. It's just one that isn't getting a lot of it isn't getting a lot of traction, but something that you definitely are adept at doing is highlighting stories like that.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And I forgot to finish my pitch, but basically I clip out mainstream media, mostly mainstream media clips. Every so often I might come across independent news because I try to watch everybody, and I would clip certain things that I think that, like I said before, people in our family needs to know about. That's when I would clip those specifically. But I haven't not seen any mainstream media clips on that topic. Jordan Cheriton did ask Susan Sarandon if the AOC or anybody or Jamal Bowman was going to help out with that issue, and she said that I understand right now AOC is out camping, and God bless everybody. You need to go and get a break and get some vacation, but there are issues that are very important, and it is in her neck of the woods. So we would love some help in that area.
Yeah, I think that the solidarity that is necessary when it comes to our primary issues is more important than worrying about, having the perfect result. And, really, again, I don't, we're not people who want to, look down or even critique anybody who wants to do the style that they want to do, because it kind of opens up a lane for us. Our focus is on the things that are important. I mean, as we've pointed out, we did call out Anna Kasparian specifically for what she said about Aaron Mate. I thought that was absolutely necessary. But once you get past that, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. You're just doing clickbait stuff. And that's what corporate media does. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. Do you find that that's the direction that we really need to take? Is we need to separate ourselves from what corporate media does, which again,
I'll say this. I find I'm just like everybody else. I find it a hell of entertaining, to be honest with you. I'm the same guy. I was watching everybody's different views on all this different stuff. This is what I would say. Along with the sugar, we got to have the medicine. And in my fantasy world, what I would love to see, where everybody had their clips, at the end of their clip, I would love for them to say, hey, there's a new organization called March for Medicare for All. And look, there's one going on in almost every city or in various cities throughout the country. Please go out and sign up for it, volunteer, and also go out. I believe it's July 24th, I think it is.
Yes. The 24th.
Yeah, go out there and be activated as well. So, yes, people are going to do. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do with their channels, but I would love, in my fantasy world, you have the entertainment, talk about the issues, talk about the different squabbles or whatever, the drama. That's what, we watch TV on, CBS or all this stuff for drama. It's just human nature. But along with that, if we can promote, and even if it would, in my super fantasy, it will be like Jimmy Dore and T.Y. and Cenk Uygur. They don't have to go to the same march, or maybe they go up at different times to speak, but support the same effort. Wouldn't that be great? I know they're both for Medicare for all.
Yeah, I mean, we've been dealing with this for over 2 years now, and I say it all the time. The left eats their own like no other, and it's so. It really, to me, is almost like a filter where you filter out the people that genuinely are working towards issues and people that are working towards either drama or just the betterment of their own channel and clicks or whatever it is. But I just feel like they need to grow up. Like, I mean, it's really no other, and I don't know if it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I believe somebody said, like, don't they have each other's numbers? Like, they could just.
Well, and I gotta tell you, it also seems to be a guy thing, and really, it's like maybe it's just ego. It's I don't know what it is over there, but they need to grow up.
But we need to have more action oriented. I've thought about, and I think when you came on my channel, Jen, we talked about what does the future of the progressive independent media look like? Because we have to prepare for 2024, right? We saw in 2020 and we saw in 2016 how the media was so pivotal in setting the narrative and just squashing Bernie, especially in 2020. How can we overcome the mainstream media, right? And I think one of the things that is so important for us is not only to collaborate, we need to collaborate more, which thankfully, one of the things with this issue going on, I've seen different people come together and they're talking. I'm hoping we could just move that energy now into action, and once we take that next step, that's when we're going to be getting prepared for 2022 and most importantly, 2024, when it's time to primary Biden.
Yeah. All right.
That's a very good point. We were talking the other day. I don't think Biden is going to be primaried, but I do think that there is a strong possibility, to be honest, that he's not going to run again. He did say that he wouldn't. And it looks like right now there is a lot of internal squabbling going on with Kamala.
You don't think he's going to be primaried?
No, because I just don't think I mean, honestly, I
think Kamala's going to get primary.
Yeah, I think this is a one and done type situation. I just think
okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying he's not going to run again. You're not.
I don't know that he's going to make it through his whole term. My theory has always been he has to get at least halfway, because in their mind, otherwise it would count as her first term. So, the only way she could and the truth is, I find her completely unelectable. But like in theory, the only way she would then have 2 additional terms would be if he got through at least half of this term. But I think that she is their next candidate, one way or another. Interesting.
Yeah, and I've also been very adamant that I do think that the path is pretty clear for DeSantis to win the presidency in 3 years.
And I honestly do not see a way in which somebody who could not win a single primary is going to beat somebody like Ron DeSantis.
I'm just not sure if the progressives, because honestly, I think the future is Nina Turner. I mean, knock on wood, and we'll announce this now. Jen and I are actually going to be meeting with a group of our super volunteers in Cleveland for the home stretch of the election, bringing it home for Nina.
Okay, let's not lie about it. We want to be there on victory night. Okay.
No, but hey, listen. You know what? They're going to pull out they are going to pull out all the stops to try to stop Nina. There is no question that is what they're going to do. So if you do have the opportunity to get to Cleveland rocks, or Akron for that matter, this is definitely a race that we can't take for granted, because I do think that Nina is the heir to Bernie's not me, us movement. I'm just not sure that I don't think 2024 is realistic in regards to her building up enough momentum as a representative in order to go for the brass ring, if you will. I do think 2028, absolutely. But there's a lot of foundational growth that we have to do. And I know a lot of times people talk about, what is the best path? What is it that we need to do? I still think the most realistic path for us is to be involved at the ground level within the party infrastructure, meaning becoming a precinct committee person, getting other people to join, having a seat. Everyone's like, oh, you want to have a seat at the table. Well, actually, I want to make sure that we can actually put people in positions to win that are not going to be part of the corporate special interest.
Well, we want to copy Nevada. And you know what? What'll be interesting will be, like Peter said, that he thinks it was smart how Amy Vilela basically took off a session or took off a cycle and is running now. And it'll be very interesting to see how much better she'll do with the actual infrastructure in place that's not blocking her out. And I'm not all about electoral politics. I'm very, very realistic. But I do think that until we handle the party infrastructures in our states, that we're spinning our wheels.
I agree with you. I think that Kamala would be the perfect person to primary, to go up against, right? So that's going to be interesting. And I would love to see Nina Turner. She's my number one, but I want to do what the moderates or the liberals do, right? What they do, they have a litany of candidates, 5, 6 different candidates, and let's see who floats to the top, right? Like, let's seriously see who gets up there. We saw Kamala. She was their number one pick, but she dropped like a rock, right? And was able to eventually get Biden, who beat Bernie. So I want Nina. Nina would literally, me personally, would be my number one choice. But I would love to see a Ro Khanna or other people. I know people have issues with Ro Khanna too, but people on our side of the equation, people who are for Medicare for all. I'll go back to that. If you're for Medicare for all, you're on my team. People who are for Medicare for all, seriously, not like an Elizabeth Warren way of Medicare for all. I'm talking about some serious Medicare for all stuff. I want them to run as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
But we got to know how to consolidate the vote, though. That's another thing. So,
yes. And again, I think, when we look at what transpired in Iowa, not just in 2020, but also 2016, I think it just speaks to the infrastructural issue that exists. It isn't necessarily the candidate, and you could have a candidate that's great and you really believe in, but if you're not building that infrastructure, I think it's very, very important. But I also think it's important that we really do highlight independent media, and that's where you come in, because so much of what corporate media does, I mean, I can't even listen to it for 5 minutes. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you even put up with it.
I can't watch it.
Yeah.
I can't.
If there is sort of like a method to your madness, I am kind of curious. Are there any particular? Let's put it this way. I think this would be a great question to ask, because I doubt you've been asked it yet. Who would you say, based on everyone you watch in corporate media, who is the absolute worst, biggest charlatan you could think of that absolutely unequivocally is the ultimate bootlicker of corporate power? And then on the other side,
Sanity, right?
It's no, not necessarily.
That's too easy. That's too easy. I'm not even going to go to Fox News.
All right.
I think it's
okay. So
my vote's Brian Stelter, but I'm curious as to who you would say. And I'm also curious as to who you might think is somebody that maybe people aren't giving a fair shot to that actually is doing a decent job.
Man, these are very good questions. So let me first go back to like my evolution on mainstream media, right? I was one of those people watching Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes on a regular basis before 2016, thinking that, they have the left media, the left in mind when they do their news and everything. And it wasn't until Bernie ran that it really opened up the veil. I wasn't super in a fantasy world where I knew I was thinking that they're going to invite, Mike Gravel and Chomsky on their show. I didn't see that happening, but I thought to a certain extent, okay, they're on our side to a certain extent, right? And it wasn't until Bernie ran and you saw how they treated Bernie that I really understood, like, okay, these guys are not on our team. They're not on our side. And I definitely look at them differently. I definitely got turned off to watching them more. I always watched independent media since 2008, but it definitely turned my stomach to wanting to watch MSNBC and Rachel Maddow and those people. So, all right, to answer your question, that's a very good question. Let me answer the second one first. I think some of the potential stars or the good people, I think Mehdi Hasan is a good one that, he could frustrate you every so often, but he at least he had Chomsky on, the other day on the Peacock channel. And then who else? I think that Mel, man, what's his name? Mel Arbor? I can't think of his last name. Mel, I think is his first name. I think he. When I find out his name, I'll try to look it up real quick. Oh, The Beat. He does The Beat on MSNBC. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I unfortunately, this is your job because I can't deal with it. The one person who I will say though,
here you go, Ari Melber.
Ari Melber. Okay.
Melber. I'm sorry, Ari.
Okay.
But he does. He can frustrate you at times. And I'm talking about we're trying to get the best out of MSNBC, right? You're trying to, so it's hard to really get the cream.
It's a low bar.
But yeah, exactly. Ari is a good. I think he has some good takes at times as well. But go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was actually going to say I do have to give, and I think MSNBC personally is worse than CNN. CNN is entertainment news. That's what it is. It's not real. But people take MSNBC seriously. The one person who I will say is pretty vocal about major issues like Medicare for all, living wage, jobs programs, things like that is Ali Veshi. He actually does.
Ali is a good guy too.
Yeah.
He would be my number one actually. I think and then Ali, and then Mehdi. And then Ari. And then surprisingly, Joy Reid would like every so often mention, well, she did once, Medicare for All, after Bernie left and was nowhere in contention.
Of course.
Then she starts saying, you know, every so often she'll say something nice about, hey, it's a pandemic. Don't we need Medicare for All? You know, yeah.
Not a threat to the power structure, though. That's what it comes down to, as much as anything else. And who would you say is the biggest? Okay, this person definitely makes my job more fun. Let's put it that way.
You kind of cut out a little bit, so you just said
broke up, Peter. Yeah. We're having serious problems there.
Yeah. So just ask that question one more time.
I'm doing the best I can. I'm hoping and praying that our connection stays strong. Who would you say is the worst corporate media personality host that you have to cover that just absolutely delivers the worst of the worst when it comes to hot takes, I guess?
You'd be surprised. I'm not even going to pick a host. I'm going to pick a guest that goes on that I know, hey, this guy is on. I got to listen tightly. And that is Donnie Deutsch. Donnie Deutsch that's always on Morning Joe. He's on MSNBC.
Yeah. You know
you're going to get a hot take from this guy at some point. When he's on.
You know why he's like that? Because he, you know, and I hate to reference Jimmy, but he has Trump in his shadow. He really does. Like Donnie Deutsch is Donald Trump in just a different form. They're both cut from almost the exact same cloth. Both inherited a massive fortune from their father, and you know, act like playboys and think that they worked hard and everybody else is a lazy bum. He's such a his attitude is so terrible. But yeah, you know, listen, we would love to have you back. You obviously do a phenomenal job. You know, you get shout outs all the time, especially Kyle Kalinske. We see you on Secular Talk all the time. He really references you a lot. You know, we'd be more than happy to highlight anything you'd like on our show because, hey, look, you're doing a great job. You're doing God's work, my friend, because I know I can't sit through it for 5 minutes. I just cannot do that. And the fact that you are willing to help independent media and just the progressive movement in general get to the meat and potatoes of the issues with corporate media, I think is a really important service that you're doing. And we're obviously grateful that you're here, and we certainly hope that you'll come back. Yeah,
before you let me go, I just want to, first of all, I'll just say that, that's my part of the ecosystem of the progressive independent media. I try to, I call myself the unofficial, I put in the ad, the unofficial producer for all the other shows. And that's how I contribute. You know, I do my one show a week, but you guys do the hard work and the grit of booking great guests and getting, having great conversation. And so I want to talk about the People's Gauntlet real quick. And that's the peoplesgauntlet.com or peoplesgauntlet.com. And that is basically an open source vetting system for candidates. And basically, a lot of times you see a candidate, you go to their website and you can see their issues page, but sometimes there's issues that are not addressed that you would love to know. And that's where the People's Gauntlet comes in. I'm hoping that candidates who are running, they will go to the website. There's 5 gauntlets. And so, for example,
I'm watching Shervin watch this, and he's seeing what you're saying backstage, and I'm hoping he'll go and do this because we're having him come on in a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So, what's exciting is I already have one candidate who is going through all 5 gauntlets. They already did 3, and Amani Oakley in New Jersey 10. We're going to be launching her first gauntlet at the early next week, and she just launched last Tuesday. So basically, for example, the Israel versus Palestine issue it's a very touchy issue, and a lot of times it's not addressed, but that is in our foreign policy gauntlet, and that's one of the many topics that's there. And I think one of the benefits of the People's Gauntlet is not only are you hearing the candidate articulate their thoughts, and I want them to genuinely give how they feel. Maybe they're not for something, maybe they are for something, but we want to not be tricked as a voter listening to, and as we give money, as we volunteer, we want to really know how the candidates feels on all of these different topics. And the most important thing is you can see their charisma, you can see how they articulate the issue, and is it more believable? Do you believe this person, other? And there might be certain races where there's 4 progressives. So now you can really choose and you have more information than just going.
He's not talking about Florida people. Calm down. It's not happening. Anyway.
Anyway. So basically, and also you want to know that when they get into Congress, not only are they voting for Medicare for All, but they're able to convince others. You know, we might need to pull over some moderate Democrats, and I don't know if we will ever get a Republican, but hey, if somebody could bring over a Republican, that would be a miracle. But we want to see their leadership skills as they talk about the issues.
That's awesome.
Case, it was a real pleasure.
You.
Guys, peoplesgauntlet.com, check it out. We will definitely have you back soon, my friend. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much. Have a great one.
You too. So needless to say, we're building what I think is a very effective coalition of a lot of different people. Case does an unbelievable job. Again, it really is a service when you think about it. It's a thankless job in many ways. Because I wasn't saying it, hyperbolically speaking, I cannot listen to CNN or MSNBC. I can't listen to it.
No. I don't watch any of that.
And once you know the ins and outs of how corporate media works and the way that they deliver messaging, it's like you call them on it as soon as you see it, and you're thinking, God, there's millions of people who hear this and think that this is correct.
Not only hear it, there's people that sit around and have it just on in the background of their life, like
my late grandmother. I can't even, every day,
honestly, the brain poison.
CNN, that was it. That's all you would find on the TV. But the good news is we are building a movement that is based on non-corporate representation. It does take time, but we are starting to see some breakthroughs. And as Jen likes to say, soon enough, there will be more of us than they are of them.
So this could be, and we have a candidate that could be the next one of those people.
You never know. And of course, California is a state that has a lot going for it, despite all the issues that do exist. Obviously, there's a lot of infrastructural issues, but that is slowly but surely changing.
And this is California 30? Is that it?
California's 30th district.
Okay.
I know it's in Southern California.
Let's find out.
We're going to find out exactly what the details are. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Shervin Azami. I hope I said it right. Trying to run to represent California's 30th congressional district. Welcome to Generational Change.
Hey, folks. Thank you all so much for having me.
Absolutely. You know, when I see his name, often in my mind, I transpose it because we have a friend down here, a state legislator, whose name is Shervin. Shervin. Yeah. And so it's Jones, right? We just always call him Shervin. It's Shervin Jones, right? So when I see it, it's exactly 2 letters. But introduce yourself, like what district, what it looks like, and like what your key issues are.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Again, thank you so much for having me on your show today to discuss our People First campaign in my hometown, San Fernando Valley, California's 30th district, part of the city of Los Angeles. Again, my name is Shervin Azami. I am a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a public health activist, and I'm an immigrant. I'm the son of 2 Iranian-American asylum seekers who fled religious persecution in Iran during the time of the 1979 revolution. Just about 25 years after, our government here in the United States deposed the only democratically elected leader in Iranian history.
Yeah.
So the politics has always been personal for me. I exist because of political decisions, and I am running to uplift and empower working people, dismantle white supremacy, and end corporate welfare. That's what our campaign's all about.
Yeah.
Our hometown, California 30th district, has been represented by the same corporate Democrat for 24 years, Brad Sherman. Who started out in his early years in the late 90s, voting for laws that repealed the Glass-Steagall Act and allowed commercial banks and investment banks to consolidate, setting the stage for the 2008 economic crash, to just last Congress starting to take money from corporate landlords, including BlackRock and Blackstone, that have been responsible for evicting thousands of people nationwide in violation of CDC's eviction moratorium, and have been exacerbating our housing crisis by also now pension funds and private equity firms purchasing up to 1 in 5 single-family homes nationwide, creating a new housing crisis for us. You know, here in our community, I have always fought for social justice through the lens of public health, whether it's on climate issues, addressing the health impacts of toxic urban runoff on low-income communities of color, to at the national level, being legislative director for a national indigenous healthcare nonprofit, fighting to make sure the federal government honors its treaty obligations to tribal nations. And one of the bills I'm most proud of getting across the finish line as an advocate was a bill that canceled copays and deductibles for Native American veterans, getting us one step closer to single-payer Medicare for all. Our campaign as a public health activist, single-payer Medicare for all is one of our top issues. But in addition to that, as someone who's worked in public health, I recognize the intersectionality of all of our issues. And so for me, housing is a human right. climate justice and a Green New Deal, a decriminalized immigration system, divesting from the U.S. war machine, abolition and comprehensive criminal justice reform. All these issues work hand in glove. And here in our community, we have so many pressing issues that our leaders have failed to champion structural reforms to address. For example, we had the largest natural gas blowout in U.S. history happen in our district in 2015 at Aliso Canyon. 109,000 metric tons of methane released into the air, impacting all of our communities, my friends and family, leading to nosebleeds, asthma, cancer rates, and yet we haven't seen any action from our legislators, including the incumbent Brad Sherman. To whether it's housing and homelessness. We have 5 unhoused neighbors die per day in our city. More unhoused folks die of hypothermia in sunny LA than in New York City and San Francisco combined. Yet we're not seeing our politicians fight for permanent supportive housing. We're not seeing them champion housing as a human right. And so all of these issues kind of coalesce into saying, why do we, in a district that Bernie Sanders won during the presidential primary, a D+18 district, why are our representatives not sticking their neck out there and fighting with vigor for the structural reforms that we need? Brad Sherman has never been that guy. He's not going to change after 24 years. And I'm proud to say that I got more bills passed in 2 years as an advocate than Brad has in 24 years as a legislator. So it's time for change, and we're ready to bring that change to our community here in CA 30.
Let me ask you, wait, just very quickly, does that cover Calabasas?
Calabasas is just outside of our district.
Okay, because that's where the only people I have that are out there are that's my husband's family's in
You're
Calabasas.
lucky, it could be worse. Calabasas is covered by
Ted Lieu.
Ted Lieu.
Yeah.
And Ted Lieu is one of the few good.
All right. Well, I'm sorry, that was all. I didn't know anybody else outside of there.
Okay, so you want me to take over now?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're speaking with Shervin Azami, who is running in California's 30th congressional district. It seems like this is a district that is highlighted to some degree because there are multiple people running in this seat for this seat. What would you say has been the effect? Because I did a little research on Sherman. You know, obviously he's a corporate Democrat through and through. He's not really known very well, but not much different than, you know, your standard run-of-the-mill type, if you will. It seems to me that he's very knee-deep in the worst type of corporate special interests. You mentioned BlackRock and the devastating effects that it's having. Can you talk about, because Florida, obviously, you know, housing is a very major issue here. It certainly is a major issue in California. How is housing shaping up in the 30th district in regards to whether or not low-income housing is readily available? And is this an issue that you are primarily fighting for? Because it does seem like it's one that Mr. Sherman is not fighting for.
Absolutely. It's by far the most important issue on the minds of voters all across Los Angeles and in Southern California. You know, like every other issue, homelessness falls on racial fault lines. Black Angelenos are roughly 8% of our city population, but 34% of are unhoused. And I am proud to say that we are the only campaign challenging Brad Sherman on a platform of housing as a human right and actually fighting for housing for all. You know, Brad Sherman, as I mentioned, he's literally the legislator who can do something about our housing crisis, not just because he's a federal rep, but because he chairs the Investor Protection, Entrepreneurship, and Capital Markets Subcommittee on Financial Services. That subcommittee has jurisdiction over our federal housing finance laws, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, authorizing new affordable housing programs. And as I mentioned, as soon as he became chair, BlackRock and Blackstone started bankrolling his reelection campaign. And so for us, what Housing for All looks like, it looks like repealing the 20-year ban on new federal funding for public housing. It means making our public housing agencies and voucher programs fully funded and entitlement-based. It means fully funding our Native American housing programs, our Native Hawaiian housing programs. It means banning discrimination based on source of income or based on gender identity or sexual orientation. These are significant issues for voters in our district. And there's a sordid legacy of redlining in Los Angeles and in the San Fernando Valley in particular that's not been addressed. So there's a reason why the San Fernando Valley has much higher concentration of single-family homes as opposed to multifamily housing. That's because for many, many years, the Valley was a white enclave. And so for us, banning exclusionary zoning, which is one of the relics of the racist policies of redlining is incredibly important, and really incentivizing state local governments to do inclusionary zoning and put forth the necessary funding for green infrastructure-based public housing. I believe housing is a human right. And instead of putting our resources towards permanent solutions, here at the local level, our city council members are putting more and more funding into criminalizing homelessness and into stopgap measures like shelters that are run more like forms of soft incarceration than anything else. Why? Because they have curfews that coincide with the workday. They have strict sobriety requirements without actually providing treatment services. They bar family members from coming to visit folks in these shelters. Shelters are not housing. Permanent supportive housing is the best way forward to guarantee housing as a human right. And instead of that, like I mentioned, we're seeing City of LA put billions of dollars into further policing and criminalization of homelessness and displacement of unhoused neighbors, as opposed to providing that housing. This is work that we do every single day. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the West Valley People's Alliance, which is the largest homeless outreach group in the San Fernando Valley. And we do mutual aid every single Sunday, providing resources to our unhoused neighbors while our politicians are absent on these issues. I think just kind of one quick example of something Brad Sherman could have done, at least in the interim, to stop the bleeding when it comes to homelessness, is one of the first things that President Biden did when he entered office was allow FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to provide local governments 100% federal reimbursement to put folks into hotels for the duration of the pandemic, get folks off the streets and provide them at least temporary housing. And not a single politician, Brad Sherman included, said anything about the fact that the city of LA has refused to ask for that money. So just issues like this, where we need to kind of combine local issues with national issues and really bring more and more people into the fold to talk about, this is the reason why we see homelessness in our communities. This is the reason why over a third of our state's 3.4 million uninsured reside here in Los Angeles. These are issues that are important and on the minds of voters. And unfortunately, we have never had representation putting forth the efforts, fighting each and every single day for the structural reforms that we need. And
wait. You're suggesting that a congressperson actually be an advocate for the people in their area? Is that what you're suggesting? Because that's, of course. I mean, that's just crazy talk.
Right? I mean, who would have thought that our public servants are meant to actually be public servants?
It's just crazy. It's really concept. Crazy. Right? Wow. What a concept.
I think that this, as you alluded to before, being a Bernie strong district, this is the after effect, if you will, of Bernie Sanders running for president. Right. Is the fact that now you not only have these progressive candidates running like yourself, but it's becoming more of the norm to not only run with no corporate money, but to go after the representatives who take it. A person like Sherman, who's been in office for a long time, and he's an older gentleman, if I remember correctly. I think he's close to 70. This is the type of person who just kind of has the attitude of, well, this is how it's always been done, so we're not about to change it now.
I think that they're lazy. I do. I also think that I think they're on the take. Okay. No doubt about it. And I also think they're lazy. I think they're comfortable and lazy. I think they're overpaid and underworked. And I think it's ridiculous.
And, on this very topic, as someone who's advocated on Capitol Hill, Brad Sherman likes to hide behind co-sponsorship. He'll sit there and say, well, I co-sponsored Medicare for All. I co-sponsored the Green New Deal, while he continues taking money from the very corporations and lobbyists fighting against passage of Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. Yep. And I can tell you from experience, co-sponsorship is the floor, not the ceiling. All that goes into co-sponsoring a bill is sending a one-sentence email saying, please add my boss's name. We had 118 co-sponsors of Medicare for All last Congress. Did it even get a hearing? No. We need advocates. We need people who are going to put in the work, calling for hearings, writing letter writing campaigns, getting voters to turn out and reach out to the members of Congress, demanding a vote on Medicare for All. If COVID-19, a once-in-a-century pandemic that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and left millions of Americans without their employer-sponsored health care, if that isn't our clarion call for single payer, I don't know what is.
What I think, and this is a great way to wrap up this conversation, a lot of people have a lot of criticisms, in many ways valid, in other ways not, when it comes to AOC. But what I like to point out about her, which is very important, is how her victory over Joe Crowley completely changed the dynamic of politics in New York City. Now you have endless amounts of city council victories, whether they be through the Sunrise Movement, which in my opinion, I believe Jen's as well, is the best grassroots organization in the United States today. You also had a number of DSA victories, and not just in New York City, but I think the biggest victory of all was India Walton winning the mayoral race in Buffalo. And what that, I think, in effect does, because of her advocacy, is make the New York Health Act an even more central focus. Because if you can't get Capitol Hill to move, as you know, you take it to the state level. That's why you have CalCare being pushed
in California. And if I could just jump in really fast on that topic, our governor campaigned on single payer, and yet he has not followed through on that campaign promise. We need to hold power accountable to the people, whether it's at the state level, local level, or federal level.
And that is why, more than anything else, corporate special interest money is what defines us. You are taking it. You are not for the people. You do not take it, then we can have a conversation. And that's the way this needs to be treated. And you see it happening all the time. These coalitions are, as long as we stick together and as long as we keep our eyes on the prize, there's always this constant left infighting. But in my opinion, the issues at bar that are most important to us, living wage, housing, Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, ending the drug war, ending wars in the Middle East, something that I know is very near and dear to your heart. We are going to be able to do this if we start building these coalitions far and wide. California is a great place to do it. And we are certainly wishing you nothing but the best in your race. Obviously, things are just getting started, but we want to help you build your name recognition.
Thank you.
There are also, like I said, other people running in this race. I hope that no matter what happens, there is a consensus amongst everyone who is running that Brad Sherman this needs to be his last term in Congress. 24 years sounds kind of like the Congress person that we have to deal with on a regular here in South Florida.
24 years with 2 bills passed, one under Trump, the other one under Bush.
Yeah. Well,
and if I could say one more thing, I mentioned earlier, we are the only campaign running on housing as a human right. We're also the only campaign running to divest from the U.S. war machine, to divest from militarized policing and carceral punishment, to abolish ICE and tax the rich. These are all very important issues, and I'm proud to also have the endorsement of brand new Congress nationally. And we're working to build the plane here locally, and we are proud of the incredible outpouring of support. And we're going to continue working with and for our community to bring forth the structural policy changes we know we need and we know we can get. Poverty is a policy choice through and through.
Agreed.
Shervin with the number 4, thevalley.com. Please check him out. He's got a great platform. He's got a great campaign video.
And as always, everybody, keep, regular monthly contributions, even small ones, it's really important. And also it helps build up the amount of donors. And he has a cute baby.
And I have a cute baby. And now it's on Daddy Duty.
Look at that, Poonam.
This is little Barrett. Say hi.
Nice.
Say hi, sweetheart.
God. How old is that little one?
He just turned a month old.
I was going to say he's a teeny little peanut. Oh my God, so cute. Fresh. It's beautiful.
Hey, they say that kissing babies helps get voters. I mean, it's if he's going to be your lucky charm,
then it counts when it's your own. I don't think that it's a means of your own.
No, definitely, but it'll definitely help with the soccer moms, and there's quite a few of them out in the valley. So if that's gonna get them to get their vote, then that's
we
good
use
enough.
My dog. So
Lulu is the star of the show, baby. So we're doing our thing, and Shervin, we really appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely be in touch, I'm sure, as the campaign goes along. Again, Shervin, let me get it up one more time. Shervin4thevalley.com. Check it out.
The Valley.
Lend a hand if you can. And of course, he has the seal of approval of Jen's first endorsed organization, Brand New Congress.
Yes.
So definitely give him a shout, give him a like, help him out if you can. And we really appreciate you coming on this evening.
Thanks, Shervin. Nice
Thank
to meet
you all so much. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely.
Our pleasure. Take care. I mean, I think, again, even if the candidates that we have come on the program obviously have a very, high, a big mountain to climb, what I do think is very important to note is that anytime you can help build that name recognition, that just increases the scope by which this movement can become something really impressive. But that is a great segue into one of the reasons why these movements fail. They have failed for decades, and they have been failing ever since JFK's assassination in Dallas. And why is that? Because when the American people want to rise up and have something different than the corporatocracy that we have been dealing with,
they get taken down.
They get taken down. And they get taken down in ways that you don't know, you don't see, and would have no clue how it happened. And by the time you figure it out, they're already gone.
Okay, but listen, before we bring on Ray, because this is an important point, okay? And I have to quote a very dear old aunt of mine, because we recently, Donald Rumsfeld recently died. And so I have to quote my aunt, and she always says, if you have nothing good to say about the dead, say nothing. They're dead. Good. So that's sort of my point, but we're going to skip that tonight, and we're definitely going to talk about facts of the cases with Donald Rumsfeld. So even though normally I would have nothing to say, but anyway, I digress.
I'm curious to talk about what real political protection looks like, because that is something that a lot of people have bestowed upon them and why they never ultimately end up falling. But the CIA is an organization that is what is known as the shadow government. You don't know who they are. You don't know where they are. But you certainly know what they're up to in many ways. They are Big Brother. That is Big Brother in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
So without further ado, former CIA officer for 27 years who knows the ins and outs of the deepest rooted secrets within our federal government and beyond. Ray McGovern, welcome to Generational Change.
Thank you, John.
Peter.
He's Peter.
Oh, you're Peter.
That's Peter. John's our producer.
Oh, okay.
And I'm
Peter.
Jen.
I think I probably should explain my unkempt nature here.
I think it's great. It's like the Grizzly Adams thing.
I just want a present. I don't ask for much. Just one present.
Actually, it's disheveled in memory and in solidarity with my good friend Julian Assange. This is the way he looked when he was unceremoniously dragged out of the embassy on April 11th, 2 years ago. So this is 2 years worth, and I'm really, really hoping that I'll be able to shave it off soon, although things are not looking good for Julian. So with apologies, I can speak through my beard.
No, we are big supporters of Julian Assange. We actually did a telethon in support of Julian Assange. I'm currently scrolling for everybody who hasn't done it yet. The Department of Justice comment line, we're scrolling it below. Please call them and tell them to drop the case against Julian Assange. Please do that. Anyway, sorry.
No problem. I just had to explain that because I look a lot different. Otherwise.
You look wiser.
Ray, I think a good place to start, obviously, is the Assange case. It appears that, one of the things that obviously the power brokers and the federal government like to do is, conjure up any type of, possible type of evidence that they can against somebody that they want to have taken down. It appears that this, this particular person that they were working with is somebody who is very unscrupulous, and that's putting it in a nice way. It appears this whole case has been falling apart. Now, I'm curious if it's at all possible that maybe there could be a bright enough light shined on this case where they simply say, yeah, we've kind of lost the narrative. I think we're going to have to just we're either going to have to let Assange go. I think the most likely scenario is that they'll basically say, we're just going to have him go back to Australia and they'll deal with him there. And of course, that's most likely where he'll either be under house arrest or something simple. Or are they going to come up with some new tactic to try to keep him in just forever isolation, so to speak?
Well, the British are going to do what we tell them to do. The people in charge in Washington want to get Julian. They want to make an example of him so no one will ever even think of disclosing war crimes by U.S. troops again. That's what Julian did. He also revealed all manner of secret tricks that the CIA and the NSA were up to. That too is verboten. So pure and simple, they're trying to make an example of him, and that the vassal government in London will do what they're told. Now, it gets extremely uncomfortable when their latest indictment, of course, falls apart. The part about, him hacking into government computers in Iceland and all that kind of stuff. And by any rational legal standard, he should be freed. But hey, 800 years after the Magna Carta, where English nobles wrested some rights from King John, where are the English nobles now? There aren't any. They're sycophants. They're so obsequious to what the U.S. wants to do that they'll do anything. So, talk about rules-based, talk about lawful things, forget about it. They're going to get Julian. And I fear that their real game is just keep him from court to court, keep him from jail to jail until he expires.
Yes.
That would do them just fine. And that's really painful. So the solution, now, Peter, you asked what we should do. This is it, folks. This is not only for Julian. This is for the First Amendment. If we don't get off our patooties and get out there and make our views known to our congressmen, senators, and, everyone needs to know this, then, it's on us, I have a favorite expression. I call it the Noah principle, okay? Now, everybody complains about what's happening to Julian. Well, Noah principle is this. No more awards for predicting rain. Awards only for building arcs, okay? We got to build some arcs. We got to step up to the plate now and save Julian if we can, and certainly make it clear that we consider the First Amendment and the Magna Carta still operative.
Yeah. You're sounding like, when we first started talking, like you're a little bit discouraged about the recent, information coming out about this witness. But wouldn't this be basically something where, like, to me, what it looks like is this is a way for the Justice Department to bow out and save face and basically just say, yeah, well, it was that guy. And so now we can drop this because really it was Trump's Department of Justice that really then appealed that decision. And maybe they just, at this point, are willing to let it go, but they can't look like they're willing to let it go. So that's why this guy is coming forward now.
Well, you might be hopefully right, but all indications are that a considered decision was made by the Justice Department under Biden to pursue this thing. A lot of people whose access were gored by Julian Assange. The whole deep state has it really in for Julian. So even if Biden wanted to do the right thing, I don't believe he could without risking really bad repercussions from the deep state.
Yeah. I think that it was one of the things that I did appreciate about Obama is that he didn't pursue this. Granted, he didn't do anything to solve the problem, but he didn't pursue this. And I do think that Merrick Garland is a fairly reasonable person. I think that there is an opportunity that there might be where there wasn't a couple of years ago. So I think that's the importance of really pushing now, because certainly there's a better chance now than there would have been 2 years ago.
Well, I agree with that. I'm ready to see if Garland is any different from his predecessors. So far, he's not shown me much. So there is reason for hope here. It's just that, if Americans don't know about this, this whole story in a very reputable Icelandic journal is almost 2 weeks old now. In other words, the foundation of the superseding indictment has fallen flat in its face.
Right.
Know that? No. Why? Because it hasn't been in the mainstream media. No one knows that. People who read the New York Times think they're reading all of the news that's fit to print. Forget about it. They don't know about that. They don't know about a lot of things. And the ability of the press to suppress this kind of information, well, if I was, if I were a person likely to be depressed, I'd be very depressed at this.
Yeah, I mean, we see the power of corporate media, and one of the biggest things that I know you spoke out against was the whole Russiagate nonsense and how they were able to basically take our attention away from real wrongdoers and say, "Oh no, it was them, it was them," and we just all watched that, and I felt like I was watching it in slow motion, and I'm like, didn't we fall for this before, like lots of times, and we're doing it again, and so yeah, I think the mainstream media, they're just stenographers.
Well, that's right, and the problem is that when I go back up to New York, where I was born and where I was educated, I talk to my old friends, and they're still in the mode of reading the New York Times and believing it and not believing anything that they don't see in the New York Times. It's bizarre. These are very well-educated people, okay?
Yeah.
There's one woman, and this is perhaps apocryphal, but she was told, you've been brainwashed. You've been brainwashed on all this mainstream media stuff. And she turned and she said, look, I'd know if I were brainwashed because I read about it in the New York Times.
That's irony.
I always find that I have a lot more scorn towards liberals than I do towards conservatives, because liberals fancy themselves as being well-read, well-informed. Conservatives tend to have a much more simplistic approach to things, which is probably why they're more easily manipulated by carnival barkers, if you will. But there are a lot of people who are on the liberal side that are in the big cities like New York, like Washington, D.C., San Francisco, and so on, where they kind of have this attitude of, well, the whole world revolves around us and we know what's best, and don't even attempt to show us something otherwise because it's blasphemy. And I think that that's kind of where a lot of that comes from. And I'm guessing that this is something that you have seen for years. And in a way, it just kind of makes it easy for the shadow government to do what it wants to do, because people will buy this stuff. They don't question the New York Times. They don't question the Washington Post. They just assume that it's true.
Well, it's part of the shadow government, of course. The media is. I have an acronym that was blessed by the likes of Stephen Cohen, professor of Russia for a long time, and Pepe Escobar on the other end of the spectrum, and it's the Mickey Mat. Now, if your viewers have a pencil, please bring it out, because this is what it is. Mickey Mat rhymes with Mickey Mouse, easy to remember. The military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, media, academia, think tank complex. Mickey Mat. Why do I say media? Because media is the cornerstone. Without the media, it doesn't work. And the media is controlled by the rest of the Mickey Mat. Mickey Mat, of course, is an elongation of what Eisenhower talked about, the MIC, the military-industrial complex. It is more complex now, if you will, but it's easily identified. They're the ones that are running this country. It's been very clear to me for years.
Speaking with Ray McGovern, former CIA officer, contributor to multiple outlets. I'm curious, a lot of people have soured to some degree on the squad, if you will, in terms of what they were sent to Congress to do. There is this joke, if you will, that as soon as you get to a federally elected office, you're basically put in a private room where they show you the other angle of the Zapruder film and just tell you, do you have any questions? Okay, now you work for us. Now
right, well, and the entire orientation is by all the lobbying firms and the big money interests, and that's who sponsors all of the orientation, right?
But what I am curious about, Ray, is there something that you can shed light on as to why they basically have gone silent and why they don't take any real political chances?
You mean people like AOC?
I'm just putting it out there.
Well, she's from my native Bronx, so don't expect me to say anything about AOC. I have to sort of pass on this one. I have no expertise in internal.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I have a much better whole selection of things. I mean, this is like a wealth of opportunity, especially for someone like you, Peter, who's like such a history dork. I would think you would be asking all sorts of questions. Like,
I would just get. Hey, listen, I don't know if we got him for 5 minutes or 50 minutes.
No,
but I figured I would just
this
throw that
is
out
more
there.
important. Like, I would ask. So Ray, for people who don't know, Ray, you served under administrations ranging from John Kennedy to Bush Sr. That's correct, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So which of those administrations did you find the most challenging? Like, what was it, where you were, like, in your position, what did you find the most challenging thing, like in a behind the scenes way of any of those administrations?
Gosh, that's really hard to say. During my later years, I was briefing the President's Daily Brief to Ronald Reagan's 5 most senior policy advisors, including Vice President George H.W. Bush. That was a challenge. I mean, it was a welcome challenge. Every other morning downtown, going around to 3 or 4 of those people. We worked in teams. It was a special challenge because my expertise is in Soviet history, Russian history. You know something about the Soviet Union? I did then, and I still know something about Russia. Now, what was the challenge? Well, the challenge was that Russia was changing, that this fellow Mikhail Gorbachev came on the scene, and he was going to change everything in Russia. He was very, very different. And I could tell in my people I relied on, my colleagues, that they could affirm my views. So when I was briefing the Secretary of State or the Vice President, and they wanted to know whether Gorbachev was the real deal, I said, yeah, he is. Take advantage of it. Negotiate with him. Maybe you can get some arms control deals. And they would look at me quizzically and they'd say, well, that's not what your superiors say. I was working for Bill Casey and Bobby Gates at the time. And I said, well, you asked for my opinion. I don't always agree with my superiors. So that was heady stuff. And by, George Shultz, the Secretary of State, was able to get more credibility with Ronald Reagan. And out of that came some really, really important arms control measures that were agreed to by both sides, including the destruction of a whole class of short-range and medium-range ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads. It was a big deal. So in terms of challenges, that was one challenge that I really welcomed. And man, that was good duty. It was a real high.
That's really cool.
Ray, I am a history buff.
I know. That's why I don't understand why you're not like digging in that.
Well, I'm letting him speak. You don't have to. I like hearing what you have to say.
Let me ask how much time we have here.
You guys have as much time as you like.
Yeah, we're just shooting it. We're just.
I've always been of the belief that the last president we had that actually did what he wanted to do was Jack, and I think he paid for it with his life. And I think ever since then, there basically has just been this notion of the president is basically a figurehead. Yeah, they make decisions, but they're really making them based on the interests of people that you don't know and don't see. Is there anything valid to what I just said?
When you say Jack, you mean Jack Kennedy, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Well, he's the person that got me down to Washington, of course. I was a senior when he made that inauguration speech asking folks to do something for their country rather than the country do something for them. It was a tragedy. It was a tragedy all the more so because the deep state was involved, was responsible for it. And, there's a terrific book I can recommend. I've read lots of them, but this is the best. JFK and the Unspeakable.
I read it.
By James Douglas. He's got it all together. And it's a sad thing to read, but it's very convincing. So do presidents since John Kennedy have to worry about their back? Yeah, they do. Do they? Yes, they do. Is the Secret Service, can it be penetrated? Yes, it can. It was under John Kennedy. So people like Reagan and others are very, very careful, had their trustees protect them and didn't do anything that went far beyond what the deep state wanted them to do. So yeah, it's a real problem. It's even more problem now. I talked about the Mickey Bat. Well, that's part of the deep state, of course. The whole thing fits together. If Joe Biden wanted to leave Afghanistan, do you think he could?
Probably not.
He can, but it's going to be a terrible political price. Why? Well, because he lost Afghanistan. Who is responsible for all that? The Mickey Mat, especially the M, the military. You ought to take those generals. You ought to take those generals that told Obama, yeah, just 10,000 more troops, not just 30,000 more troops. And then they get an extra little star on their lapel. And they don't give a rat's patootie about the soldiers that work for them. We have almost 3,000 soldiers killed there. Afghans, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
For what? So if Biden needs to defend himself, and he will, he needs to have the courage to say, look, this is what Bobby Gates, the Secretary of Defense, encouraged. This is what Hillary Clinton encouraged. This is what Petraeus and McChrystal and all those guys, oh yeah, right around the corner, just like Vietnam. It's crazy to watch this sort of stuff. They ought to be held account, the more so for their cynical attitude. You know, Robert Gates, he used to work for me, I should say up front, back in the 70s. To see him as Secretary of Defense after slopping over into the Obama regime and being responsible for more and more thousands of troops into Afghanistan, he had the temerity in a major speech at West Point to say, you know, if I were advising a subsequent president about getting involved in Asia, I would say what Douglas MacArthur said, to get involved in the land war in Asia is just crazy. Huh? You know, this stuff is really bad. If you watch these people, you see what they do. And then when it goes really upside down, they say, well, you know, I'd advise, you know, MacArthur said, don't get involved in a war in Asia. Oh, don't get me started.
My grandfather is 93. He did serve in the Pacific, and he likes to talk about how MacArthur was very adamant at the end of the war about going in to all of the Southeastern Asian countries and taking out all the communists, basically just killing them all. And you know, Harry Truman, he has his good points, he has his bad points, but when he left office, he had a 22% approval rating. And I would like to think that a lot of the reason why his approval rating was so bad,
You're freezing.
I'm freezing.
You froze, but I'm going to say I think maybe his approval rating was low because of the mass murder of, you know, hundreds of thousands of people and the forever radiation poisoning. I'm going to go with that. Maybe that's
no, that did play a role, but the truth of the matter is, and this is the biggest difference between the Americans and the Russians were willing to die for their country. Americans, not as much. So dropping an atomic bomb versus having a ground war that would have taken six-figure deaths of the United States military is not something the American people felt prepared to do, because the Japanese were certainly prepared to do it. So they did drop the bomb, but the reason why he caught so much heat is because there was this threat of communism, because we had this relationship with Russia that was, you know, tedious at best. And then once World War II is over, it's like, oh, well, you know what? Now we're a global power. We got to keep the machine going. So now it becomes this Cold War. And the whole idea was to basically, you know, take out Laos, take out Cambodia, take out Thailand, take out Vietnam. And by not doing that, you know, Truman basically put himself in a position where he was just branded essentially as a loser of a president. History has been more kind to him ever since then, but he walked out of office with a horrifically bad approval rating, George W. Bush level approval rating. And I'm curious from your perspective if that had a lot to do with the way that, the MIC more or less branded him by not agreeing with MacArthur to do what he had suggested.
Well, Peter, I guess we differ on many things here. I think MacArthur was crazy.
I am 100% with you on that.
He wanted to bomb China in 1958. All those folks were ready to bomb China. Southeast Asia, where's Southeast Asia now? We lost. Is it communist? Well, I suppose, but the Vietnamese are making most of our clothes and we're trading with them and so forth. More important, Peter, with respect to bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the people who know about all this and the documents show that MacArthur, Eisenhower, the naval guy who was head of the chief of staff, all those folks were dead set against it. Why? Because they knew that the Japanese were ready to surrender. Okay? They knew that because they intercepted Japanese communications. So the only two people that wanted to use that terrible weapon were Truman and Jimmy Burns, his Secretary of State, from the great state of North Carolina.
That's ironic.
Jimmy Burns and Truman were bigots to begin with. They referred to blacks with the N-word all the time. And these people out there in Japan, they weren't worth a damn. They were just as bad as blacks, right? And so racism played a big part in that. But the big deal was to prevent Russia from coming in. They were ready to come in, and we wanted to show them the might of our atomic warfare and to prevent them from coming into Japan. The thing, I was exposed to this fable that American troops were saved by the explosion of these bombs. That happens not to be true.
Peter, didn't you watch Oliver Stone's movie? Didn't you watch that? Watch the series,
I did, but there's
he spelled this whole thing out that's just not true. That why we did that is not true. It was unnecessary, and Truman knew it was unnecessary, and he did it anyway.
Yes, but not everybody watches Oliver Stone, and there are a lot of people who still have this misconception of the ground war that would have been pending. And again, this is how history is told from a perspective of the victors who are in control of the narrative. It doesn't mean that that's what the truth is. That's just what we've been fed.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And interestingly, everybody, just because we're talking about this, on Monday, we're going to be speaking with Daniel Shervin, who is going to be coming on and talking about his book, A True History of the United States, which I call it reading. I do it audible. Can I still call it reading if I'm not really reading, if I'm listening? But anyway, I've been listening to the book, and it reminds me of like a more contemporary version of Zinn. It's very like fact-based from the perspective of not the victor. So I will be talking about that on Monday.
That'd be great.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm doing the best I can to try to educate as much as possible. But when we were talking about you were talking about Gates and seeing him in that position, and it makes me think of other people that are in positions that they ought not be, which brings me to one of my moments that for me, meeting you is really kind of a little fangirly. I feel very similar, Peter, to how I did when I met Medea. Do you remember when I met Medea and I was all kind of giddy? So when you spoke out at Gina Haspel's confirmation hearing, that was something that really spoke to me. And I was and how you were treated was, to me, seemingly par for the course for them. But the fact that you did that. So if you would talk a little bit about why you were speaking out about that, because everybody was celebrating we're having the first female head of the CIA. And I wasn't feeling so celebratory about that. But if you could share, because to me, for people who didn't realize, you can look this up on YouTube. You could watch Ray, badass, being dragged out of the Senate hearing, confirmation hearing. And would you talk a little bit about the history there and why you were opposing that?
Yeah, sure I can. I suppose I should let people know for context here that I'm described as a CIA officer, but there are really two CIAs. Okay, there's the one that Truman intended, a kind of a analysis group that would be able to evaluate things without fear or favor and serve up to him reports and analysis, as he put it, without treatment. Okay. In other words, he knew that from the Pentagon, he'd always hear that the Soviets were 10 feet high. He knew that the State Department would always be defending its policies. He wanted some people working directly for him with no political agenda, where he could go and say, McGovern, you tell me what you really think. Are there weapons of mass destruction there in Iraq or not? Okay.
Right.
The way things evolved, that turned out to be a fiasco. But in those days, back in the day, if you will, that's why I joined, and that's what we did. So the analysis part of the CIA was hermetically sealed off from the operations part. And actually, there were turnstiles in every floor of the building where you couldn't go to the I couldn't go to the operations part, and vice versa. So that needs to be understood to understand your question and the answer that I will give to it as soon as you remind me about what the question was.
I just was wanting you to give your background on why you felt it was so important to speak out at the confirmation hearing for her. I mean, I know, and you know, but like Peter said, probably a lot of people watching, and yeah, I know that she's not there anymore, thankfully, but just the importance of what that meant that she got that appointment.
Well, people should know, if they don't already know, that she was a known torturer. She was in charge of the first black site in Thailand, where two of the so-called terrorists were waterboarded, as well as used other techniques. One of them 187 times, I believe. She was, what do they call her?
Bloody Gina.
Bloody Gina, yeah, okay. That's John Kiriakou, my friend who was on the operational side. So here she walks in to a Senate confirmation hearing in the committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee. And after her and beside her are people I used to work with. Good people. People who I knew. People who prepared the president's daily brief with me. I said, my God, what the hell's going on here? And, you know, it was just, I had already given back my big medallion that I got, that retirement for exemplary service, or the Exceptional Service Award or something. I had already thrown that back at the head of the House Intelligence Committee in Congress because of torture. I mean, torture is beyond the pale. And so, you know, here I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at all these senators. All of them know that she ran that torture site. Okay, and I'm saying, my God, you know, they know the story. Why could they possibly confirm her? And one of the senators, I guess it was Dianne Feinstein, said something which gave me an opening. And so I walked up to the front of the gallery there, and I said, please excuse me for a second. I'd just like to point out blah, blah, blah. And I said, you know, she's a known torturer. She was, and you know that. She was in charge of that base in Thailand. You all know that. And you're going to approve her to be head of the CIA. And then, of course, I was grabbed and manhandled and spent a very tough night, actually, that night in D.C. jail. So that's what motivated me. I mean, torture cannot be justified under any condition. There, as I learned in ethics, there are three main evils that are called intrinsic. They're always evil. One is slavery, one is rape, and one is torture, for God's sake. And to see that my friends there were hovering around Gina Haspel as if they owed her a debt of gratitude for waterboarding.
Shouldn't she have been in prison? Like, see, like, I would think that would be punishable. You know, like I would think that she should be in prison, but you know.
Well, she should be, but as you know, the U.S. is not going to do it, and we don't belong to the World Court. So who's going to get Gina? I imagine she's hunkering down now.
I'm sure she is, but more importantly than any of that is the idea and the fact that it doesn't work. So it's kind of like they can't even show results for what they did. So there's no there. And like and I don't know if anybody on here would think that works, but if you could, I know that you have cited before where we know for a fact that it does not work, the information that you get from torturing people. If you would talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the only good results you get from it are fabricated results. You know, if you want to say that Saddam Hussein is in cahoots with Al-Qaeda, give your captive to the Egyptian service. They know how to get people to say what you need them to say. I mean, it's so cynical. You can't get accurate information from torture. And that long Senate Intelligence Committee study, which actually was completed, where Dianne Feinstein finally stood up for her staff and insisted that thing be completed just before she was removed as chair of that committee. That showed chapter and verse from CIA own correspondence that they falsified the information to make it appear that they got some good results from the torture, whereas actually they got no good results, many false leads. And unless you really want to get somebody to say something, then torture, you want to get them to say the right thing, send them to the Egyptians, send them to the Jordanians, send them to other Israelis friendly services. They know how to do this, and they did. So, it's just so, I mean, as you can probably tell, it's beyond the pale. It's not.
How do you reconcile? Like, you're obviously someone with a pretty good moral compass, and I think about like the idea of people like you, and as John Kiriakou as well. I like him very much. I've interviewed him, and he's amazing. I don't understand how you reconcile being on the inside of that when you were seeing the kind of stuff you were seeing. Like, how hard that must be. Like what was it where you were finally like, yeah, this is not great.
Well, I mentioned, I think, that there are two CIAs.
Yeah.
And that we were hermetically sealed, one off against the other, that there were turnstiles in the building. So what I learned about what was going on, for example, in Latin America, was only what I saw in the New York Times, which used to actually publish stuff like that. So, it wasn't really a moral issue for me. Now it is. After I left, and this is 30 years ago, when I saw what was going on and I could see, for example, that my former colleagues had been suborned into falsifying, into creating intelligence to justify a war of aggression, I don't think any worse than that, And you don't have to take it from me. Again, a Senate Select Committee on Intelligence looked into that for 4 years, and in 2005 concluded that the intelligence ginned up to justify, in quotes, the attack on Iraq was not corroborated and even non-existent was the word, non-existent. So what does non-existent intelligence look like? Looks like manufactured intelligence to justify a war. And I know some of the people who did that. And that's really painful because they were my friends. And, it's hard to look them in the face anymore. A lot of them are gone or a lot of them are dead. But my God, how it shouldn't be such a unique reaction. But I'm afraid that a lot of my former friends went with the notion that, well, we did what we can because 9/11 was so terrible, and we just were doing our job, and we just followed orders, right? Following orders. That's the Bloomberg principle.
Speaking with Ray McGovern, former CIA officer, one of the things that I think a lot of people probably don't understand is the mindset it takes to be a CIA officer, to be in the shadow government. I'm curious if, just from your personal experience, whether through yourself or through others, I just think that, you kind of have to lack empathy in a lot of ways. You kind of have to have this benevolent view of, the United States, and what we do is always right and always a means to an end. Otherwise, how could you work for the CIA? I think that there are people that, they rationalize what they do, that there is a good reason behind all of which takes place. Do you find that is the case, that they really do believe in the sanctity of what they're trying to accomplish, or do you think they recognize just how destructive they are overall, not just to the American way of life, but the way we are to the rest of the world?
Well, again, I have to draw a distinction. In the analysis part of the CIA, we had free reign to analyze just about everything there was, open sources and satellite photography, intercepted communications. And it was our job to make some sense out of that and to tell the president what was going on. In addition to all that, when arms control negotiations happened, and they happened big time in 1971, 1972, I was chief of the Soviet Foreign Policy Branch, and I seconded 3 of my best analysts, one of whom was Bobby Gates, to support the SALT delegation, Strategic Arms Limitation Talks delegation. Now, we did that, and in 1972, I was in Moscow for the signing of the SALT I negotiations, the SALT Treaty, the ABM Treaty, which was the cornerstone for strategic stability from 1972 right down to 2002, when George W. Bush got out of the treaty. Now, what was CIA's role there? Well, number one, the president wanted to know, Nixon in this case, whether we thought the Russians were serious. And we said, yes, the way you've played off the Chinese against the Russians, they are very serious. They want to come to an accommodation with you. They want détente and they want rapprochement. Whoa, okay. Well, now, if we sign this piece of paper, can you verify it? Can you make sure you tell us exactly if the Russians are cheating? And we would say, well, how soon do you have to know? 2 weeks. Well, we go back to our specialists, our satellite folks and everything else, and we went back to Nixon and Kissinger and said, yes, 2 weeks, we could do it. Now, that enabled, because of our capabilities for collection and analysis, that enabled that treaty, cornerstone treaty. Now, did the Soviets cheat? Yeah, they tried. They cheated. In 1983, our imagery satellites found a monster ABM radar in a place called Krasnoyarsk in Middle Siberia. The Russians weren't allowed an extra monumental, terrific big radar, ABM radar. And so President Reagan called them on it. Said, look, we have some photos we'd like to show you. What are you doing here? You got to tear them down. Tear the Berlin Wall down. Well, tear this ABM radar from Krasnoyarsk down too. Well, the Russians demurred. But in those days, there was something called, what was it called? Negotiations. Yeah, I think that's the word. And we talked to them for 6 years. And by the time Reagan had left, George H.W. Bush came in, 1989. The Russians said, all right, you're right. Pictures don't lie. We'll tear it down. And they tore it down. What's the point of all this? Well, we can verify if there's a modicum of trust between the Russians and the Americans. Right now, Biden says we're not going to trust anybody. His spokesperson says, we don't do it. It's not about trust. It's not about trust. The Russians have to change the way they behave. And then maybe we'll talk about trust. It's crazy. It's really crazy now. But in those days, CIA's role was really, really a force for peace. Now, this other business about, there was this communist scare, right? Everybody said, well, what we got to do is prevent Southeast Asia from falling to the communists. Well, the smart people, and a lot of those people were the analysis part, say, Vietnam doesn't matter. I mean, dominoes, Indonesia, come on, that's not going to happen. But it was really hard to get anybody's ear because the politics were such that you couldn't possibly lose China or lose Indochina to the communists.
How much of an influence did Joe McCarthy actually have, or was he more or less a mouthpiece for, the MIC?
For the what? For the
military-industrial complex.
Well, he was worse. He was really, really bad. I remember as a high school student listening to fierce debates about McCarthy in the living room, There were people that were convinced he was really, really good defending us against communism. And there were others that saw through him completely. He did a lot of damage. He did a whole lot of damage to the State Department and to the cadre of specialists within the government that were afraid silly about telling the truth about Russia, how powerful it was, or how to do what everyone said it could do. It was really, really bad. And he decimated the Chinese experts in the State Department. So he was terrible news. Not only that, but I grew up in that whole era. And when people like Gene Kelly, how he can dance, how he can sing, what a terrific acting. Gene Kelly was smeared as being pro-communist. I was conditioned. Me, really smart guy, right? I was conditioned. Whenever I saw Gene Kelly, oh my God, no. Oh, but he's pro-communist. My God, that's an awful thing to do to a young person, Yeah. And, if I were around in those days and I saw a lot about what was going on in our imperialist society, and I, held no brief to Stalin, but when I saw Gorbachev and those reforms and stuff, and I saw that Gorbachev and then later Putin were bringing a lot of Russians out of poverty, and Xi in China doing exactly the same thing, there's a lot to be said for systems other than capitalism.
And we're still doing this. We're still doing it. We're still harping on the Russia thing. And what's so interesting to me about it is they no longer even have the ability to say it's a communism thing. So I don't understand it anymore. Okay, so back then it was, it's communism. That's bad. That's a threat. Okay, well, now they're not communist anymore. They have oligarchs. We have oligarchs. Really, does it matter? And so, I just, to me, feel like I don't care whether my oligarchs are Chinese, Russian, or American. It really doesn't matter to me. And it's just fascinating that we're still able to have this Red Scare thing when I don't understand I say to people, what do you think is going to happen? The Russians are going to come up on the shores and try to take over. And what is it that you think people are scared of about Russia? I don't understand what they think is so bad there.
Okay, well, it's the Mickey Mat, all right?
Yeah.
You need an enemy. You can't justify $1 trillion a year to go to defense without a credible enemy. That's it, pure and simple. Now, under the second George Bush, you had Al-Qaeda, you had insurgents, you had terrorists and all, but pretty much they faded, okay? So you needed an enemy. What happens? Well, in 2013, it looked like Obama was going to succumb to the blandishments of Putin. I say that jovially, right? Yeah. What am I talking about? Well, in August of 2012, as the CIA and others were already involved in Syria, Obama was mousetrapped at a press conference. He was asked, look, you say you're not going to intervene seriously with arms in Syria. Are there no conditions under which you would do that? and he was slipped a piece of paper. And he said, "Well, yeah, if the Syrians used chemical what, or even just moved them from place to place, that would change my calculus. That would change my outlook about intervention." That was August 20th, 2012. Guess what? August 21st, 2013, there's a sarin attack chemical outside of Damascus.
Yep.
John Kerry gets up 35 times, count them, 35 times at the State Department. He rings the rafters and says, Saddam Hussein, this is a Freudian slip, Bashar al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad, 35 times. He did this as a terrible thing. Bashar al-Assad didn't do that. No, it was a false flag. Bashar al-Assad's army was winning, and the rebels needed some way to stop it. And so they did this sarin attack, and they blamed it on Bashar al-Assad. Now, what happened? Obama is under great pressure, as he admits later, by all his advisors, including Biden. He has to retaliate now. Why? Because a year previous, remember the press conference? He laid down a red line. He said, this would change my calculation. This would be a red line. And so they're all saying, red line, red line, red line. You got to retaliate against Syria. What happens? Well, John Kerry is off somewhere else in the world. But Obama goes up to visit St. Petersburg with Putin and other people there for an economic summit. Okay, Putin takes him aside and says, "Look, Mr. Obama, remember when we were together in Northern Ireland in June and we set up that working group to get Syrian chemical weapons destroyed?" Obama said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, the Syrians have agreed to destroy all their chemical weapons." Obama says, "Really?" And Putin says, "Yeah, watch TV tomorrow because the Syrian foreign minister is going to announce that. That would get you off the hook. We could have it done under UN inspection on one of those U.S. ships that you have outrigged, especially for the destruction of chemical. What do you think?" "Oh, yeah, that sounds really good." Obama comes home, right? Now, in the midst of all this, 2 days before Obama comes home, John Kerry's in London. And he's saying, we have to retaliate. We have to retaliate for the use of these chemical weapons. We have to retaliate, right? And then he gets a call on the phone. "Hi, this is President Obama. Guess what? We don't really have to retaliate because Putin has worked out this deal with the Syrians. They're going to destroy." Oh, okay. So what's my point here? In the wake of this, on September 11th, 2013, September 11th is just a coincidence, Putin has an op-ed published in the New York Times. And what does he say? He says, my relationship with the U.S. and personally with President Obama has been marked by growing trust. I welcome this very much. The only thing I disagree with President Obama is on the notion that one country is exceptional, more exceptional than the others. I think that all countries are equal under God, and that whether they're closer to democracy or fighting their way to democracy, God looks on all these people as equal. Now, I was reliably informed at the time that Putin wrote that last paragraph into the op-ed. That was proven 3 years ago when where he said exactly the same words in an extemporaneous response to a question. So what did that mean? Whoa, that meant trust. That meant Obama didn't give us the war we wanted against Syria. That meant that the neocons had to retaliate, had to do something to blacken Russia. And what did they do? They set up the coup in Kiev, Ukraine, which happened on February 22nd, 2014. So do the math, 6 or 7 months after this op-ed in the New York Times. Well, now, they knew, if they didn't know, they didn't know anything about Russia, that Russia wasn't going to allow its only ice-free naval base in Sevastopol in Crimea to go to the Ukrainians who were being now subsumed under NATO for all intents and purposes. So the Russians reacted by holding a plebiscite in Crimea and annexing it, okay? And they protected the people of Russian stock in those eastern provinces there called the Donbass. Well, what was that? That was a Russian invasion of Ukraine. That was a Russian invasion of Crimea. And that was what was held out to everyone, especially the West Europeans. The East Europeans, you have to have sanctions. And then it started going down and down and down from there. And we had our enemy back. No trust anymore. None of this idle talk about working things out together. We had the enemy that the Mickey Mat can't survive without.
So how realistic is it?
Is what?
That's an enemy. I'm hearing feedback now.
You're getting bad feedback.
Well, it's not realistic at all.
Exactly.
A little bit about Russia. The notion that Russia is going to invade Western Europe is hogwash. The notion the Russians are coming here, like that lawyer from Stanford said at one of those hearings, we better get them in our Ukraine rather than get them here when they come, I mean, it's ludicrous. The level of discussion in the media, the basic assumption is the Russians did all this stuff, including all these cyber attacks and all that kind of stuff. I just wrote a piece. It'll appear tomorrow morning in antiwar.com. But it addresses this business about Biden being under great pressure now from people like David Sanger in the New York Times to show that he has cojones, okay? Free translation from the Spanish is manliness. Okay?
Yeah, we know what cojones is. We're South Florida. We're all about it.
I know, but for your audience, okay? So what's he got to do? He's got to retaliate. Retaliate for what? For all these cyber attacks. Well, who did the cyber attacks? It is reported the Russians are charged with. Some people who are clued in on this tell us there's no proof. What would the Russians want ransomware for? So what I'm saying here is that Biden is being mousetrapped in exactly the same way that they tried to mousetrap Obama into retaliating for a false flag sarin attack in Syria back in 2013. And I'm hoping maybe one of Biden's advisors will read this thing. The last part of my piece has to do with, well, who could be doing all this cyber attacking with Russian language? Oh, well, you wouldn't read this in the New York Times because the Times wouldn't publish it. But in 2017, WikiLeaks divulged a whole category of offensive cyber tools developed by the CIA with the help of the NSA, one of which, called Marble Framework, allows the CIA to hack into a computer or server, disguise what was hacked in, and attribute it to, well, they worked in 5 languages: Chinese, Persian, Arabic, Korean, and you guessed it, Russian. Okay. Now, this whole thing was called Vault 7, Marble Framework. Now, guess what it cost? Well, it was 700 million. I'll say it again. 700 million lines of code. Now, I don't know much about this, but we have 2 technical directors, former technical directors from the NSA in our veteran intelligence professionals for Sanity. So I asked Bill Binney, Bill, 700 million lines of code, that seems like a lot, Bill. He said, right, that's a lot. Can you still do multiplication, right? Yeah, I can. Well, each line of code costs $25. Okay. Do the math. If you just use 100, just use 100 million of those lines of code, it's going to cost you $2.5 billion. Who has this kind of money? Oh, the deep state has it, NSA has it, CIA has it. Multiply that by 7. So, what I'm suggesting in this piece is that might have looked elsewhere for this Russian hacking. It could actually be people very close to home, like maybe in Langley or up there by Fort Meade in NSA. And I kid you not, I wouldn't dare say that if I didn't have the corroboration of 2 former NSA technical directors and a fellow who managed cyber for IBM for 3 decades. Those people are incredible advisors to us. And so I'm suggesting in this thing, look, President Biden, don't get mousetrapped like they tried to do to Obama. And besides, you really ought to ask CIA, you really ought to ask Bill Burns to look into this, because it's altogether possible that since they don't really have a need to know, like you, Biden, and Bill Burns, the head of the CIA now, that they don't know. In other words, this Russian hacking could be done by folks I used to work with.
We're having this conversation and it's very in depth. And I think about the average person who listens to a foreign policy correspondent on, let's say, CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News. And to me, I think it speaks to just how ill-informed, especially about foreign policy, that the average American voter tends to be, despite the fact they think they're well-informed, as you were alluding to earlier. Well, I read the New York Times and I know. What would you say is the biggest misconception that the average political person has when it comes to foreign policy? And what is something that you think we could learn from in regards to, when we hear something, we can recognize that, no, this is actually not true. This is the PR information that they are giving, but in reality, it's the furthest thing from the truth.
Good question, Peter. A really good question. I would say that we don't live in a zero-sum world. The fact that China is becoming more and more powerful, the fact that they lifted 100 million people out of poverty in the last decade or so, that's no threat to us. The fact that Russia has recovered now under Putin, after being actually plundered by those Harvard boys that Washington sent into Russia in the 90s after the Soviet Union fell apart, that's not a threat to us either. So this whole zero-sum attitude got to change. The Chinese actually have said this explicitly. It's not a zero-sum. I'm going to give you a little vignette here, which I think speaks to this problem. I have lots of grandchildren, 10 now. And when I was visiting the nursery school of a little grandson, I saw that these little kids were so well behaved, 4 years old, and they're sharing things, and no fights for 2 hours. I couldn't believe it. So I asked the teacher, I said, how do you keep these kids this way? She says, Mr. McGovern, come with me. So we go into her little conference room. She said, please sit down. So I sit down. She says, now, how many chairs do you have around this table? I said, 4. She said, well, how many toys on the table? 2. That's it, Mr. McGovern. So I said, traduisez, s'il vous plaît? What do you mean? She said, we teach them that they have to share. Now, if we don't get it through our noggins at this point in our planet's history, you have to share. You have to cooperate so that our grandchildren have a decent planet to live on. Well, that's crazy if we can't do that. We have to share. We have to get out of this zero-sum mentality where every advance by the Chinese is something bad for us. Why can't we just live and let live? I mean, what happened to that? What happened to negotiating our differences? We've got to have a whole, what used to be called a metanoia, from the Greek. Nous meaning mind, meta adding force, means turn your mind upside down and stop thinking about hoarding. Stop thinking about taking more than is your share, especially on this planet. And
you're starting to sound like a socialist, Ray. We can't have that kind of talk here. We're going to get, that's it. We can't have that. You're talking about sharing and we can't, that's just crazy talk here, man.
Well, I'll add to that because I'm a Catholic, right? But I'm not the kind of Catholic one normally thinks about. I follow the U.S. Catholic bishops way back in the 70s who said, and I quote, "No one is entitled to amass more of what he or she does not need when others lack the bare necessities of life," period, end quote. Well, if that's socialism, that's me, man. I really like that kind of socialism. And of course, the guy I try to follow, Jesus of Nazareth, was pretty much the promoter of all that. So, yes, this is really important stuff. Yeah, that if we can't learn to share this kind of stuff, if we can't get out from this business of having oligarchs and people who have multi-millions or billions of dollars while others have not the bare necessities of life, well, if that's socialism, works really well in Scandinavia, why couldn't it work here? Simple answer, greed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a great transition to what I think is a very important question. A lot of people look at our government, particularly our elected representatives. Jen ran for Congress against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who I think is one of the worst we have, but there are plenty of them. It seems to me that none of them actually ever go down, though, and a lot of them have a lot of dirt under their fingernails, and it seems that that we are entering a new political era. I do believe that. But what I also believe is that a lot of the old guard is not going away easily. And I think part of that is because there is this, it's kind of like a code of silence, if you will, that we're all looking out for each other. If one goes down, we all go down. And, not that everybody has skeletons in their closet, but it does seem that despite the fact that Congress has such a terrible approval rating, very little turnover ultimately ends up happening. And I'm thinking that there has to be something to this idea that when you are knee deep in the establishment, regardless of where you stand politically, if you are a Democrat or a Republican, it doesn't matter. For the cameras, it looks like you hate each other, but behind closed doors or in one of those underground speakeasies that people pretend don't exist in DC, they all go and have a laugh. It's like, oh yeah, we got him today. We'll come up with an even better story tomorrow. But
it's like professional wrestling.
Yeah, it is. That's what I think.
If you get money out of politics, that would do it.
That's the whole theme of our existence. That's basically the whole premise of why we're here.
If you are a candidate and or you're a representative and you take corporate special interest money, that you should be cast out like a leper. That's how this has to be treated, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I agree. That's quite a tall order, though. You gotta get. There are more of us than there are of them.
There is. And what's interesting is that while you do have New York, I think is a very interesting place right now. I actually think, as I had alluded to with previous guests on the show, and something I like to talk about a lot, I do think AOC justifiably gets some flack for what she does, but I also think she doesn't get enough credit for what she did to change the dynamic in New York City. By unseating Crowley, she completely opened up this opportunity for so many non-corporate representatives, whether through now city council, you have two other solid congressional representatives in Jamal Bowman and Mondaire Jones. There could be potential others. We're obviously big supporters of Melanie DeRigo and Isaiah James. There are good people that are attempting to make this change. And I think that should be the sign of encouragement. Even if AOC isn't necessarily doing everything that you want on Capitol Hill, what is taking place in her backyard, in the Bronx, in Queens, and so on, the change is actually happening, and you can see it now with a lot of these smaller victories. Mm-hmm. Do you think that the future is bright for this non-corporate movement in politics?
Well, I have to have hope. And there are these hopeful signs. If we could get money out of politics, that would be the real challenge. I like AOC. I think that some of her colleagues are really gutsy people. They have already made a difference. So I'm rooting for them. I think we have to recognize the obstacles in their way as well.
Yeah, when you have 435 congressional seats in the United States and currently have maybe a dozen seats that are not owned by corporate special interests, that is a very tough order, a very tough mountain to climb. It doesn't mean you can't climb it, but this is a fight that I think people have to recognize that they have to be in for the long haul. And I think that that's the thing that, and it can be done. I don't think it can't not be. I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here doing what we're doing if we didn't think it was possible. But obviously, there's still a lot more work to be done at the ground level. And I think that while a lot of people are desperate and they really want to see something happen immediately, I also believe that we're in a much different place now than we were just 5 years ago. I think the fact that people do talk about the deep state in the capacity that they talk about means that they're not necessarily able to hide as much of their nefarious behavior as they once did. I think a lot more people now are aware of their tricks, and not that they won't have new ones. I think that the congressional and even senator representatives we have, I don't think they're the sharpest knives in the tool shed. I don't. But I think that the people who have worked in your line of work, they are smart and they know how to trick people. But I also think we're getting to the point now where people are more suspicious than they are accepting. And maybe it is a generational divide in some respects. Technology provides that. So where you stand as far as this notion that we are entering a new age of, you want to say enlightenment? I'm fine with that. I do think that there is sort of an awakening amongst most people that look at the way things have been done and they're saying, I don't want to do it like that anymore. I actually think we are worthy of universal health care. We are worthy of having a living wage and living in dignity with cost, effective housing. I think that the war on drugs is a joke. I think that the foreign wars are an even bigger joke. And I think if we do not band together as one people on this planet, we're not going to be able to live on this planet. So we better figure out a way to make a Green New Deal possible. Is what I'm saying resonating from your perspective as far as where we may ultimately be heading if we do continue to become enlightened as to how things are and what we could do to fight back against it?
Well, I think you're sounding like Bernie Sanders, and I like that a lot. I like Bernie.
Do you really want me to sound like Bernie Sanders?
Oh, God, no. Why would you do that?
It's because it's fun. I can do it.
Well, what happened to Bernie?
I think if you know, please share.
Well, what I mean is, how did he get iced out? How did he get excluded from being the Democratic candidate in 2016?
It was the Russians, of course.
Well, no. Well, yeah, that's. But I guess what people need to know is that Hillary Clinton stacked the deck against him. The Democratic National Committee made sure that he couldn't possibly be the Democratic candidate. Now, how do I know that? Oh, I know that because I've read the emails from the Democratic National Committee that were released and published by WikiLeaks. Were they authentic? WikiLeaks has not published anything that is inauthentic. What did they say? They say that Hillary stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. Now, how come people don't know about that? Well, because Hillary is really clever. And as soon as she saw that those emails were going to be released by WikiLeaks, she held a council of war. And she said, oh, this is awful. This is even before the convention. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Oh, that's awful, because they'll see what we did to Bernie. And somebody says, I got an idea. What is it? Let's blame it on the Russians. She says, blame it on the Russians, but it wasn't the Russians, it was WikiLeaks. That's okay. We hate WikiLeaks as much as we hate the Russians. Why don't we say that the Russians stole those emails and gave them to WikiLeaks? Hillary says, any better ideas? No? Okay, let's go with it. Now we know she went with it. On the 26th of July, in the midst of the Democratic National Convention, she authorized this fable to take hold. I heard her PR person, Jennifer Palmieri,
yeah.
a month later say, we got this news to go around with our golf carts to all the outlets and to the CNN or all that, and peddle this message that the Russians interfered, Putin himself, and they want Hillary to lose. And we had trouble understanding that, but we tried. But then when we go back to Brooklyn, then some correspondents who have close ties with the intelligence services and some of the intelligence people themselves briefed us on what the Russians were doing. And then we were off and running. Now, what was the whole point of that thing? The whole point of that thing was to create a magnificent diversion from the substance of those emails, okay? I mean, the five top people on the DNC quit when they were, okay? What does that tell you? To deflect attention from the substance and say, the Russians, why the Russians? What was the New York Times? Oh, why did the Russians do this? Why did the Russians do this? So, that's what people have to contend with. And, the New York Times and all those people led the charge, and they thought that, that this would work. Now, why didn't it work for Hillary? Now, this is a little bit tangential, but I think it's really interesting. Hillary was let off scot-free by using her unclassified computers for highly classified,
yes,
including top secret code word material. Okay, they let her off. James Comey let her off. Okay, now, just on the 28th of October, just a week or so before the election in 2016, the people in New York said, "Whoops, we got this other computer here that belongs to, what was his name?
Anthony Weiner."
Yeah, Anthony Weiner, and he's got some of his wife's emails on here. And so the people in New York said, we have to look into those. Look, Comey, you promised Congress that you'd look into everything. And so Comey sizes up the situation. Says, all right, well, Hillary's going to win anyway. He says this in his book. He says, I was operating in an environment in which Hillary Clinton was sure to be the next president of the United States, period, end quote. And so I'll make an announcement that we're looking into these new emails. Now, that caused quite a stir, didn't it? Right before the election. Guess what? The polls, those clucks that run the polling outfits, didn't know enough to do what they call what's necessary when an exogenous event happens. In other words, something out of the blue happens. You have to start from scratch. You can't go in the old polls, okay? Right. They didn't do that. So well, Hillary's still going to win. Hillary didn't bother to go to the Midwest, and so Hillary lost. Now, Comey was really sorry about that. He was accused right away of Hillary, but then they let him off because he was cooperating on other things. Now, just to fast forward 4 years later, what happened 3 weeks before the election in 2020?
They had the information on Joe's son, right, and they basically had it, they sabotaged it. And one of the best journalists out there, Glenn Greenwald, tried to basically, he said, listen, I don't have a dog in this fight. The American people have a right to know that the Bidens, frankly, are just as crooked as the Trumps. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a thief and you stole $100 million and the other stole $10 million. You're still a thief. And if the American people have a right to know that, they have a right to know it. But as you can attest, the deep state said, no, we want Joe Biden as our next president, and you are not getting in the way of this.
Well, even as much as I know about the deep state and how it controls the media, this was shocking to me.
Yeah.
How they could suppress this information, how they could cut off the daily, not the Daily, no, New York Post Twitter account, everything else, and how they could just flatten this thing down so most Americans never heard about Hunter's emails, which were authentic and which showed that Joe was involved in all this kind of stuff.
These backroom deals with Ukraine and China. And again, you know, as bad as that was, the one in 2016 that really stuck out to me was when Chris Cuomo went on national TV right after the dump and said, you're not allowed to read to the American people. You are not allowed to read these emails. And I'm thinking, this is 1984. Like, we literally are living within 1984. You have Big Brother right on screen telling you, you read these emails and you're going to pay dearly for it. I can see this, you can see this, Jen can see this, but there are the overwhelming majority of the people are just not aware of this. And
when I think the shocking thing to me is that 74 million people voted for Trump. Now, I should probably make clear that I hold no brief for Trump. As a matter of fact, I've been saying for years that he is the worst president the United States ever had, or none. Okay, so why did 74 million people vote for him? And if Hunter Biden's emails came out, could that have affected the outcome? Whoa, that's a big question, right? Now, did I want Biden to win? Well, on the lesser of two evils scale, I suppose I did. Did I publish on Hunter's emails? No, I didn't have the guts of Glenn Greenwald. Why? To keep peace in the family.
oh my God, that's amazing.
You don't like Hillary. You don't like Hillary. You don't like Biden either. Well, it doesn't have to do with who I like. But in that case, I felt, I'm just going to leave it to the Glenn Greenwalds, whom I admire greatly, to do this. So even someone like me, who prides himself on being gutsy as well as objective, sort of muffed that one. I'm not sure that anything McGovern would have said would have changed anything, but still, this is really bad if the media is controlling things. And, I have mixed emotions about keeping Trump off Facebook and Twitter and all. I have really mixed emotions about that.
We're gonna cover that story as it evolves next week in regards to Trump's lawsuit. I think the reason he's doing this is because I think he does intend to run again. I don't think he would do it otherwise. And it's look, we are the United Corporations of America. We are a circus. We thrive on circus behavior and, the constant rotating villain, if you will. And, that is the essence of where our country has been for a long time. But I think little by little, we start chipping away at this. I mean, our channel is horrifically suppressed, as are many others on independent media that speak truth to power. But we're going to keep speaking it because you have to.
Yeah, let me just make a small point here. Yeah. This slops over into foreign affairs. Now, nobody's made a big thing of this, but let's say you're Angela Merkel in Germany, Macron in France, or Putin in Russia. We can't be certain who's going to be president in 3 years.
I have an idea.
It could be Trump again. And so, there's no stability in terms of knowing what's going to be expected of the United States in 3 or 4 years. And so this is a good thing. it makes the Europeans wake up and say, my God, who are we going to deal with? We have to sort of make our arrangements now. And one example of this is that Macron and Merkel have decided, well, they'd like to talk to Putin too. And they're going to. So maybe 76 years after the end of World War II, they'll start acting like adults, because they haven't been acting like adults so far. The Trump shock, as well as the Biden shock, may be enough to do that.
Whatever it's going to take in order for us to continue moving in the right direction in terms of humanity is what it's all about. We're very grateful that you came on the podcast.
See, you're breaking up again. See, you're breaking up again. The studio is. Are we dealing with hurricane force winds down there? Is that what you've got?
No, I'm starting. The signal's coming back.
Okay, so yeah.
Jen, well, either I can wrap it or you wrap it. But
no, Ray, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. I've been a fan for a long time, and I really appreciate it. I could actually talk to you for hours. Your wealth of information, it's really amazing, and I appreciate that you're still on, speaking out and speaking up. And I think we support anybody who does that.
Well, I'm glad to have been able to share this time with you, and feel free to ask me again. If
Absolutely.
Well, I just wanted to say that I really, really appreciate you, Ray. You've done an amazing service for this country. I really wish I could have been president in 2016, but there weren't enough people that were willing to fight on my behalf to make me president. I hope that I leave a lasting legacy for a lot of people to get involved with politics. That's
I'm for you. I'm for you.
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Ray. Means the world.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
I mean, he's a trip. What can you say? I mean, and talk about a wealth of information. I feel like I am talking.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's like that.
And there were a lot of topics we couldn't cover because there is so much to cover. And I think we absolutely should have him back. I did want to talk about, Rumsfeld and Gravel. But, the bottom line is that a lot of what Rumsfeld was involved with was stuff that Ray had covered. Just in terms of, I guess what I would have probably brought up was, the story the day before 9/11, which was when Rumsfeld was on C-SPAN saying that, we have $2 trillion of unaccounted money from the Pentagon. And today, I think it's like over 10 trillion or something like that. So it doesn't end. This is just, when we talk about the shadow government and so much of, what we don't know, what we can't see, what we can't feel, it is on us to sort of educate. And as we've said, you can't just be looking at the next election, red versus blue. You have to be looking at these concrete issues that actually affect our daily lives.
Do you want to get into the news?
I think that the best place to jump would be to go right to the bootlicker of the week.
Okay. Do you want to do it? I have to step up and give the dog water, or she's gonna fall over. I need to deal with this.
I'm gonna
start news. I'll be right back.
Well, actually, you hold on a minute. You have to do it because it's on your end. You have to switch the screen in order for us to get to, because this is news and amuse. So that is not bootlicker of the week.
Oh, okay, hold on. Sorry.
Tony Blinken had to be our bootlicker of the week because he goes on French TV and he speaks in French, mind you, to basically say, I am not going to be taking a position on Julian Assange. I'm not taking a position. I'm going to let the Justice Department make a statement. This is the Secretary of State, mind you. And in my opinion, Tony Blinken is the president of the United States, or at least he is the acting president. For all intents and purposes, he is. So for him to say, I really don't have a position on Julian Assange, I am going to allow the Justice Department to make their decision. This is after, mind you, them saying that the entire case against Assange is basically starting to fall apart now because the key corroborating witness is a pathological liar.
Again, I really think that this is the Justice Department's way out of this. I think that's the whole point of that guy.
Maybe that is the case. And I really don't think that they can possibly lose this Assange narrative, because I think if it does, it really hurts them significantly because it justifies everything Assange did. And it completely saddles everything that Hillary Clinton had her people do, whether it was Wasserman Schultz, whether it was
but
Jennifer
they can blame
Palmieri.
it on this guy. They can blame it on this witness
They're
and
probably
sort of gracefully bow out.
Well, they may very well just say that Assange is guilty. We're going to allow the Aussies to handle this, but it's only because of this rogue witness that we are not able to legally challenge him anymore. But he's still guilty.
Well, that's what I think. I mean, look, I'm hoping that is because the timing of this is just really interesting to me, as it always is.
Oh, and it definitely is. And like I said, there is no question that Tony Blinken, for all intents and purposes, is our president. I think most people know that. You know, I'm not trying to disrespect Biden, but let's be realistic. This is the man who travels all over the world and basically represents our country. Joe Biden is not doing that. Neither is Kamala Harris, which, let's be honest, we don't like to dabble in the gossip, but I really do think there is something to the Biden and Kamala factions really disliking each other. And they think that Kamala is a poor representation. I agree with that. But again,
they should have thought of that before they invited her to be there.
But that's totally different because Kamala was Wall Street's choice. They don't care who the person is or what they sound like. They just care that they do what they're told. But unfortunately, Kamala is really, much like Trump was really bad at protecting the empire, Kamala is really bad at protecting it as well. And the fact that K-Hive is only going to get more prevalent and even worse the closer that Kamala gets. Like I said, I think we're kind of in a quiet period right now. I don't think a lot is going to happen until the midterms next year. But once that passes, that is when, he does. He doesn't speak good. He speaks fluent French. And so I think that's ultimately what's going to take place is they are going to try to elevate Kamala. I'm not entirely convinced that the progressives are ready to have a primary challenge. Maybe they are, but I don't think it's going to be Nina Turner.
No, can we not go there? We have other stuff to cover. Can we not pontificate about the election?
Yeah, we don't have to pontificate what's going to necessarily happen next year. And do me a favor, could you give me a little air? All right. You know, I was very good. I was very quiet. I allowed Ray to have the floor for, most of the time. So let me have a little time to say.
I know. There's a lot of stuff to cover and it's kind of late. So,
but I do think that Blinken is, he's more or less calling the shots. And the fact take a position on Assange, first of all, it's unbelievably cowardly that he couldn't do it in light of this new evidence and development. This is actually a story now. The idea that you want to pretend like there isn't more teeth to the Assange story is complete malpractice in terms of your responsibility as Secretary of State. And of course, it's complete journalistic malfeasance on the part of corporate media. No one is touching this except maybe Tucker Carlson, ironically enough. But nevertheless, he is as is anybody else, this is kind of what we have evolved into. We have evolved into a see no evil, hear no evil type of corporate media political establishment. And the best that they can do is not change what they're doing, but suppress our message. Make it so that only 30, 35 people are catching our live stream when it's going on, even though we have almost 7,000 subscribers. We should have 500 people watching this live, but we don't. And there's a reason for that. We probably could get more if we were just willing to, talk about Jimmy Dore and Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian.
Which I wish you would even spend that much time doing it. Can we just not mention it?
But it's more important that we talk about this. This is what matters. And so we obviously have, as we wrap up the evening, some news topics that we want to cover. So Jen, if you can swipe.
Oh, now you want me to do this? All right.
Hey, you don't have to do nothing. We could just end if you don't want to cover the news.
I don't know why it's not working right now.
There you go. So it is very interesting, and there are a number of stories that we can go through. First and foremost, obviously, we want to tip the hat to, Mayor Levine Cava.
Yes, I did. I felt the need to do that. I'm feeling very pleased with her level of participation and visibility and transparency, and just really be and more than just photo op. And I've been appreciating that. So I wanted to put that out there.
When you consider the other representatives down here, particularly our congressperson, as well as our 2 senators, they were there for photo ops. They weren't there for anything other than that. And it's a shame.
But she is really, you know what, this is one of those types of events where people really have to step up. And for somebody in a mayor position, it's one of those things that kind of makes or breaks. And she has definitely risen to the occasion in how she's handling this. And I just was, same with our friend Senator Jason Pizzo. He's done a great job as well. And you say, well, what is a great job? The truth is, a great job is being there. Yes.
All day, every day.
Being present, being a representative.
Whatever capacity you can. When you are a representative, a congressional representative of this area, and your objective is to show up for 10 minutes and stand in front of a TV camera, you're proving once again why you are a waste of space. You shouldn't have even shown up. But that's unfortunately our congresswoman.
So I feel proud that's our mayor. That's our Miami mayor.
I am. Yeah. Daniela's done an amazing job. And, kudos to her. But the truth is, one of the main reasons why she is sitting where she's sitting, I'll say it again, the Sunrise Movement Miami chapter really made a huge difference for her in the home stretch of the election. It really did. And she is in the most powerful position in Miami-Dade County as of right now. And 2 Democratic congressional representatives are sitting at home. So anybody who wants to come up with this theory that you have to move to the right to keep Democrats in power, Daniela is a progressive. She's a progressive. She's not a corporate Democrat. She's taken corporate money. But if you observe the way that she's governed overall, it's been pretty good. Got to give credit where credit's due.
So that
you're not unwrapping the animal that is Miami-Dade politics in one fell swoop, but that's not going to happen. To answer Rainbow Glitter's question, how do they suppress live viewers? Well, as I said, we have 7,000 subscribers, and generally channels that have that amount in, just overall, you're usually good to get between 5 to 10%. So we should have at least
views or viewers during a live
viewers.
Okay.
Yeah, we should have at least a couple of hundred, I would think, but we don't. And part of the reason that is so is we've checked data. The people who are subscribed, they're not getting updates. They're not getting bell. Even if you've clicked the bell, we've had people. Listen, I check the channel every day, and people get unsubscribed all the time. What are we supposed to do? There's very little we can do. We could just constantly tell people, always check to make sure you are subscribed, click the bell, like, comment, and share all of our videos if you can. That is what makes a difference. And if you are so inclined, what is a very big help to us, and we don't, again, it's not a hard sell. It's not one of those things where we're telling people, oh, we're not going to be able to survive. We're not going to be able to put food on the table. No, Jen and I do not take a salary. The money that we do raise from this channel is to help further our mission, which is to turn politics into service. So if you believe in the idea that what we need to do is more beach cleanups, more food distributions, more homeless care packages, be able to help non-corporate candidates running for office, those are the things that we are currently involved in. And if you believe in that message, become a $5 or $10 a month Patreon, and you'll get one of these fancy stickers.
And you also get the other merch. Right.
T-shirt, $10. Bracelet, $5. We want everybody to
no, not your. Well, yeah. If you're a $10 Patreon, you will get the jersey. If you're a $5 Patreon, we have these really cool custom hemp bracelets in our orange and purple, made on Etsy according to Macy, and that are made just for generational change. And then right now, while supplies last, you get the Lulu sticker in with your membership. Yeah.
Bingo. So think about that if you can. We would love your support. It really means a lot. And like I said, our content is content that isn't dependent upon us just trying to get clicks.
Right.
We're trying to put out great content.
Speaking of which, what are all these stories you wanted me to put up?
I think it's very important that people understand that these types of things that are happening all over the country, and as Shervin had mentioned earlier this evening, Shervin Azami, definitely check out his interview. He's running for California's 30th district. You know, wealth, class, and remote work reshape California's new boomtowns as people flee big cities. Well, what does that mean? California is it's the second largest state in the continental U.S., and most people live within about a 10-mile radius of the coastline. But there is a hell of a lot more territory, whether it's in San Diego County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County, even in areas like Fresno. You know, there is a lot of open space. There's a lot of opportunity, you know, to live and to thrive. California still has way too high taxes, but cost of living outside of Los Angeles, San Diego, Santa Barbara, San Francisco, and San Jose is a lot different than where you'll find in a lot of other places in the state. It just so happens that most people in the state live in the major cityscapes, and Sacramento's expensive too. I'm not going to say that it isn't. But certainly not to the degree that the coastline cities are. So a lot of people are finding that they just simply have to move away from the cities. So there is a sort of this migration, if you will, that California is experiencing, but not to the extent that they're all moving to Texas, if you will, or Colorado or other places. They're just moving to other parts of California. But cost of living in California is absolutely insane. It's a state that I love to visit. I will absolutely never live there in a million years. And so for those that are willing to do it, hey, you know what? Kudos to you if you are willing to put up with it. But cost of living is a very big problem. And having reasonable housing, you know, I don't even want to call it low-income housing. It's just reasonable housing. People should be able to put a roof over their head. And they make it unbelievably difficult to do that. And yes, people tend to flock to the big cityscapes. So we are evolving, if you will, in many ways. But one thing that has been noticeable is that a lot of people are not willing to take on these jobs, these menial jobs anymore. You know, they complain. Even President Biden has been out there pointing his finger. Donnie Deutsch has been pointing his finger. This isn't just the GOP. These are all the neoliberal Democrats who are saying, get off your butt, Junior. You know, kind of like Joe Biden would say, yeah, get your head out of your ears and go out and work, man. You got to work for cheap labor because it's better.
That's actually good. That's actually sounding pretty good.
Well, I've been listening to this guy, Kyle Dunnigan. He's been doing a really good job. My God. Yeah. You know, got to get a job, man. Got to go out there and work. You can't just sit at home. You got to work. You got to work for peanuts on the dollar.
Okay. So this story's about the kids, though.
Yeah, the kids, they're out there working and they're making some money. That means they're making a lot of money, man. Come on. You can work just like them. Go flip some burgers, man. That's what I'm talking about. And their salary's great. $12.50 an hour. Don't you want to work?
Yeah, that's not great. That's not great, Joe.
I think there is a very big misconception about how much they're actually making. This idea that teens are getting this upper hand on the job market. What is considered a living wage or a reasonable wage for somebody who's, let's say, 16, 17 years old is a lot different than somebody who's 26, 27, dare I say even 36, 37 years old. There is a big difference. A lot more responsibilities. And yes, I have no doubt. Oh, come on, Rainbow Glitter. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. Don't mess with me, man. I wrote the damn bill.
Lying dog-faced pony soldier.
So I do
but
think
the idea that the minimum wage workers are teenagers is just completely inaccurate. That's not, I mean, that's a fallacy. I have met many people at the Fight for 15 events and many people that work at, you know, hourly minimum wage jobs that are struggling to support families. So the fact that it's only kids that are working these jobs, so they should have to pay their dues, is just not accurate.
No, it's definitely not. And like I said, a lot of these headlines are very deceptive. They try to make it seem like, oh, the teens gain the upper hand in hot U.S. summer jobs. Right. First of all, hot summer jobs market, in what way? You know,
I thought it meant temperature.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
That's the only thing that makes sense, is that it is excruciatingly hot.
What they're basically doing here, which is even more incredible, is that they're saying shortage of adult workers is giving younger employees more leverage to seek better wages. Yeah, so they don't have to work for $7.25 an hour. They're now working for $11.25 an hour. But you can't live on that. This is deception. It is the worst kind of deception. You're making it seem like you're doing them a favor.
Ricardo.
You know the thing.
The thing.
Come on, man.
Okay.
Think about it. It's you know.
Yeah. He's back.
I have no empathy. I have no empathy.
You have no empathy,
man. Go flip some burgers. Go rake some leaves.
Listen to some words.
Listen to some words on the record player. Just go work in an ice cream parlor. And if you do that, I'm not going to visit you. Remember, my favorite flavor is vanilla dipped in chocolate fudge. That's
You've actually gotten pretty good.
You know, I'm not going to be so nice to you anymore. I know you voted for me, but
I'm very unwillingly, I must say. I mean, really unwillingly.
I don't think you're going to vote for me again.
No, I don't think I'm going to vote for you or your little friend either.
I just hope I can make it that long, but come on, man, I'm getting tired here. I can only last for so long. These kids are getting jobs, man.
Okay, but can we get out of like the reality and deal a little bit with what I have over here, which it says meanwhile in Fantasyland?
All right, I'll join you in Fantasyland.
All right, we gotta be. You are the king of Fantasyland. So
Fox News is trying to, let me rephrase. Rupert Murdoch.
Is funny to me.
Rupert Murdoch, who's got to be, Jen, what's he got to be now? He's got to be like 85, I would think. He's got.
I was actually going to say like 103, but
he's not that old, but he's up there. He's probably close to 90.
Is Jerry Hall still carrying his carcass around as a handbag? What do you think she? What
do you think she charges? If you're being realistic, what do you think Jerry is charging him? Like, what do you think her monthly?
What's her monthly stipend?
I would say it's 100,000. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would think nothing less than 6 figures a month, but you know, she's very expensive. She's very expensive.
Hey, listen, she got a lot of money out of Mick Jagger. She got a lot of money out of a lot of different men over the years. Hey, you know what? I don't have any issue. If a woman is able to get away with it, that's her business. If Murdoch is 90 years young, hey, you know what? He's still got it apparently, and Lord knows he's going to be.
He's got money, is what he's got.
That's
true. What he's got.
And that's the thing about having billions upon billions of dollars.
So talk about what he's doing. What is he doing?
So Murdoch is all about the ratings. And so apparently he's figured out, before everybody else does, about what it takes to get people to actually tune in. Fear. Fear is what gets people to tune in. So by getting involved with weather TV and really cool graphics that the seniors can see, because if anybody knows this, up until a number of years ago, all of the seniors pretty much were all watching Fox News. So they had to print the letters extra large so that the seniors could read it. This is a fact.
Extra large print, yes.
So what I do suspect is going to happen now is Murdoch is moving into the weather department, if you will, if that's even a thing, and is basically going to create very similar to what they did years ago with like DEFCON 1, Red Alert, all those types of things when it comes to weather. And it's going to be weather, kind of like in hurricane season.
They're basically creating an entire network of if it bleeds, it leads with weather. And that's basically, this is going to be nothing more than fear mongering and hoarding and emergency prepping and
what was
the
name of the last hurricane that came through here?
Elsa?
No, the one before, the one that was in 2019 or 2020, and it didn't hit us.
Michael?
Maybe. But the point is, I remember that so well because there was the American model that was being used, and then there was the European model that was being used. The American model said that the hurricane was going to hit us head on. The European model said it's just going to miss us. It's going to go up the coastline, and it's actually not going to make landfall. So as it turns out, the European model was correct. And why is that important? That is important for a multitude of reasons. Because when you get involved with weather propaganda, it isn't just about scaring people into tuning in and worrying about whether the hurricane.
Thank you, Blue Bandit. It was Irma.
Hurricane Irma, Blue, that's it. And rather than, you're tuning in for the purpose of, what is the Sharpie Gate? That is it, Greg, 100%.
Oh, that was so beautiful.
Well,
no, but they are right. You know what? We do need to get we need to open a mouth.
No, I was totally right about that. And I took the Sharpie and I showed all the wonderful directions that hurricane was going in. And it totally went in those directions. They called me crazy. They were crazy. And let me tell you something. I know we're not going to be able to get into it tonight, but Jen, I'm coming to visit you next week. We're going to talk all about the lawsuit. It's a big, beautiful, incredible lawsuit, the biggest you've ever seen. God. I'm taking down Facebook. I'm taking down Twitter. I'm taking them all down. We are going to make America even greater because I'm coming back. Believe me when I tell you, Trump's back, baby, for 24. Remember the show 24?
I think you're going to have to. And are you going to have Ron DeSantis as your running mate? Is that your plan?
I don't even know who that guy is. Don't even mention any other names. The only name that matters is Trump. Trump all day, every day. Trump TV, Trump steaks, Trump water, Trump buildings, Trump everything.
You're like
we're going to Trump. We will Trump you.
Oh my God, you've got to go.
We will Trump you.
You've got to go.
I'll see you next week.
Oh, good God. I can only dread.
Yeah, so we really didn't have the opportunity to cover that tonight, but, clearly it's brand new.
Let's not go there now.
Everyone's jumping on that now. Let's wait to see some of the preliminary stuff that comes out. But I do believe this. I only believe that the reason Trump is doing this is because he doesn't tend to run again. So, hey, you know what? Now corporate media can have a freaking field day for the next 7 years potentially. But anyway, the last story, which is we always want to end on a high note. And I think that that's very important.
I still have this included in fantasy land for obvious reasons in this country.
Well, because in this country, it's considered blasphemy to suggest it don't work.
So the story is what? The story is that in Iceland, they've made it, is it a 4-day work week like what they did in, I believe, Finland or where, because they've done it other places as well.
Well, Scandinavia is always leading the world in the most sensible way.
So is that it's a 4-day work week is what
Correct.
They're doing? Okay.
So
this
they're
has been shown to be good.
They are means testing it as we speak, but the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Overwhelmingly positive.
Yes.
And so, but what else is new?
They're getting higher productivity numbers. It's not just a matter of, people are happier.
Correct.
Okay? And quite honestly, that's sufficient for me. I think that happiness is, look, in Bhutan, which is a country I want to go to, they measure gross national happiness. Personally, I think that's what we should be doing. So, but what we're talking about with these 4-day work weeks, they are seeing increased productivity. So, and increased worker retention, which if you're an employer is a good thing. The amount of money people waste in high turnover and training is a huge thing. If you keep people happy, they'll actually perform better. So yeah, the 4-day work week is supposed to be like Iceland's not the first. I want to say it was Finland or Norway or one of those other countries that
people have just always had this mindset of, I have to, I support management. It's like, the temporarily embarrassed millionaire. No, you need to make sure. And again, it depends on your business. It depends on your model. Not all businesses are the same. This is why, we had if you guys have not seen our podcast from last week yet, that I thought was, or wait, not last week. God, I don't, it feels like it was a while, but on Monday night, we did a podcast about UBI versus the federal jobs guarantee. I actually think that both of them can work synergistically, because I do think that there is a need to be able to create jobs that pay a living wage, but also to be able to provide for entrepreneurs and for people who need to have a social safety net, a real social safety net. I like to call UBI Social Security for All, because you reach the age of 65 and then you can basically have a safety net, a marginal one at best, if we're being honest. At the same time, why not have the opportunity maybe at the age of 18? You know, we'll come up with something. I don't think people from birth need to be getting UBI, but you come up with some.
You know what though? If we had our needs being met, if we had housing, healthcare, and education, like, you wouldn't need UBI. See, and that's where I kind of understand where Steve's coming from and the MMT people, in the sense that the UBI is yet another crutch, another sort of false sense of security that shouldn't even be needed if we were doing what we were supposed to be doing in terms of how we take care of our people.
Well, that may be partially true, but again, that gets back to the whole idea of a social safety net as actually having some type of floor where you can't actually slip into abject poverty, which I think is fair. But that also ties into the necessity of it if we didn't have universal health care.
And if you didn't have housing.
Right.
So it's like if somebody came along and guaranteed you housing, healthcare, education, like that, that changes your entire level of need.
I'm gonna leave this for next time, but I really do think that the Sunrise Movement and the MMT people, they really need to get together, because I think so much of what would work with a federal jobs guarantee is the Green New Deal. That is and again,
part of the Green New Deal is the job guarantee.
Well, yes, but again, the problem with the Green New Deal as it's currently written is it's a very poor bill, because it's got 1,001 things it doesn't need. What you need is a bill that is basically a standalone that focuses on clean energy jobs to transition to a net zero carbon emission economy within the next 2 decades. If you think you're going to get there, you're not going to do it by adding in a bunch of bureaucratic BS. And this is where conservatives are correct, because that is a big part of the bill. It doesn't need to be there.
Right. So that's almost like why I think sometimes they do that, is they cram that crap
They don't
in.
want it to pass. They don't want these things to get through.
It's sort of like, it's that Mick resistance. It's that sort of,
this is why I think getting Nina in is so important, because you need somebody who's just going to fight in some way.
Let's talk a little bit before we go about what we have coming up. So first of all, on Monday, guys, we're going to be talking with Daniel Shervin. And I am really looking forward to this. I've been listening to his book, so kind of talking to him, and he does his own audio book. So basically, Daniel's been giving me a private lecture now for like a good 10 plus hours. And it's really important. I have this idea. I think people should almost have to be recertified in history every 10 years. Yeah. And it's almost like, because even for me, and I've read Zinn, and I know our history is skewed, but it's just really good to get refreshers and also get slightly different details, not different in a sense that incorrect, but there's so many things. So different books focus on different things. And so his book is called True History of the United States. It's really good. And we'll be talking about that on Monday. Also, we are going to be going to Cleveland to kind of see the Nina Turner home stretch. We have a Gen Core team of people that are going to be staying in Akron for 5 days.
No, they're going to be in Cleveland. No, they're going to be in Cleveland.
I thought you had them in Akron.
No, we switched.
Why did we switch?
Based on the need.
Oh, okay. So we're all in Cleveland.
Yeah.
But I'm not staying with them, because I'm not staying in the frat house. Okay. So there will be a team of Jen people there, hopefully really helping out with early voting, polling, watching, and whatever she needs. Peter and I will be there. We'll do our live stream from there. Monday, what is that, the 2nd?
Yeah, we'll be there.
August 2nd, we'll be doing our live stream from Cleveland. We'll be, hopefully be able to pull in some Team Nina people for a chat. So that'll be fun. And what else do we have coming up?
We've got a lot of good guests coming on the show very soon. Candidate Rebecca Parson will be with us next Thursday. We do not have a primary guest, I believe, as of yet for next Thursday, but we're working on that. And then on the 19th.
Yes, I think. Oh, no, right. You're right. We don't yet. Okay.
On the 19th is going to be very big because
yes.
we're going to have 19th is going to be one of the bigger shows that we've done to date. We are going to first have on Sam Cedar from the Majority Report.
And let me point out, we will be starting a half an hour earlier than usual. We'll be starting at 7. Actually, we'll probably start at 7:15.
Yeah, we'll promote it. So people won't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and so we'll be having Sam Cedar.
So we're going to have Sam come on, and no, as of right now, it's not going to be a debate. So don't.
No, we're not. Well, what kind of debate? Sam's on my team. We're about building bridges, not burning them.
Right.
And so I am really, in light of all this nonsense that's going on the left, I feel like we need to dig in even further and start building out bridges. So I'm going to go out of my way to have people on that are content creators and really try to build the connection. Sam is on my team. So yeah, that's the plan. And then who else is coming on after that on the 19th?
And then on the 19th, we also have Gustavo Rivera. He is the state senator from New York who wrote the New York Health Act bill. So we will be speaking with him. Very important. And then on Thursday, the 22nd, we are still in the process of setting up our Medicare for All discussion forum, as Jen likes to say. But as of right now, we have Wendell Potter, Dr. Victoria Dooley.
No, I call it a summit.
And Marianne Williamson. So we are still looking at other potential guests to have come on. So lots going on. We really appreciate you guys. Remember, one more time, Lulu sticker for anybody who signs up as a patron. It is very important. It is the only way that our channel will continue to grow, as well as being able to do, as we alluded to before, a lot of the activities that we are doing here in South Florida, from beach cleanups, homeless care packages, food distributions, helping veterans. We do it all. And it's all about building stronger community ties, uplifting small businesses. That is what, that is a great idea. Would be more than happy.
We would be very happy to get the Gravel kids on.
Absolutely.
John, if you're still with us, would you make a note? Do we have, I think we have a contact somehow for that group.
Wade, we have had Anna Escamani on our podcast before. We definitely
go back and check out our interview with her. Also,
we're a little disenchanted that she's not running for governor.
No, I think she's being smart. She's being strategic. Go back and look. We do have an interview with Anna Escamani, and also we have an interview with Daniela Levine Cava for people who want to see that. Go back and check that out. But I'd be happy to talk to the Gravel kids.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And guys, thank you as always. It's been a much longer podcast than anticipated, but of course, Ray McGovern, we could talk to him for hours on end, and I'm sure
we had three guests. We had three guests tonight, guys.
We granted him pretty good, but we'll definitely have him back again, and we really appreciate you as always. We'll see you on Monday.